the Lord of Civilization to the stars. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Human Heart. The Cathedral of the Lady of the Lake in Britannia. This source of faith in Britannia has always maintained a considerable number of fairies of the lake. Even in the current period of fighting the green tide, there are still several fairies of the lake in this cathedral to maintain it. The light green magic wind full of vitality lingers in the cathedral, representing the sanctity of the goddess. The candlelight that never goes out in the cathedral represents the light of the goddess. The tens of meters high interior hall and the magic painting representing the founding of Britannia floating on the ceiling all represent the sanctity of this area. The most important thing is the sculpture of the Lady of the Lake with her arms open inside the cathedral, looking at her people with a loving face. This beautiful, gentle, compassionate, and chaste lady couldn't bear to see Britannia forever fall into civil war and disputes, so she walked out of the lake and canonized the first Night King. Her sculpture looks forever so holy and beautiful, as if all filth and words cannot be stained at all. Under the 10-meter-high statue, any knight can sincerely feel that the goddess's equal eyes do not see themselves, but the thousands of people of Britannia. Even many knights who once escaped honor and faith will choose to use their lives to achieve their beliefs under the gentle eyes of the statue. This is the root of Britannia and the source of the knight's faith. Now, all the great knights have joined the goddess' call and chose to go to the Badlands with the Lake Fairy to fight against the terrifying green tide. It must be a very great battlefield. The deafening roar and fighting sound shook the whole earth, and the magic wind could not even cause any interference. The brilliance of the human spirit and pure malice are dueling in a distant land. The steel knights charged at the huge giant on the vast plain. The roar and light that almost shook the earth are scenes that everyone who participated in the green tide will never forget and will always remember in their hearts. And anyone who betrayed this scene must have lost his heart. In the headquarters fleet of the Britannian Chivalrous Expedition Fleet, Knight Commander Gata was kneeling under the statue of the goddess, praying in a low voice for his future. Goddess, please forgive my sins. Goddess, please forgive my infidelity. I was taken away from the great battlefield because of my poor control of my horse. At the peak of the green tide battle, my horse was frightened and took me away from the scorching hot land. I felt deeply guilty. My faith in the goddess could not restrain the mad horse. I could only kill it and return to the battlefield. But by then, the war was over. I participated in the great war against the green tide, but I was the only one who did not get the honor, only the broken scars. I swear that as the commander of the chivalrous expedition, I will never surrender to the enemy. I swear that I will take back the glory of the goddess, no matter what form the Holy Grail presents. Only the goddess and Britannia have the right to control the Holy Grail. No madman or anyone can have that supreme honor. I will atone for my sins. I will lead the knights of Britannia to bring the goddess an opportunity to clear her grievances. We will use our lives to take back the goddess's holy relic. Please don't protect our existence, goddess, because we have already lost our faith. This is our battle to regain our faith. The tall knight half knelt in front of the sculpture and uttered his oath in a deep voice. As the heavy oath continued to be uttered, the magical aura that emerged from the knight's body continued to weaken. This brave knight who was once watched by the goddess and blessed by the fairy in the lake now voluntarily chose to seal his power. He planned to use his life and blood to make up for his sins, although no one thought he was guilty. When the light on his body was completely converged, the tall knight slowly exhaled a breath of foul air. Under the admiring gaze of many fairies in the lake, the knight who made the oath gracefully saluted all the fairies in the lake who witnessed the oath, and then walked out of the goddess church in full armor. In front of the church, on the streets of Britannia, a man who looked like a knight in chivalry, but somehow looked particularly gorgeous and radiant, was smiling and greeting the citizens who had gathered around him. When Gata Knight came near, the glamorous man waved his hand to the people around him. Okay, enthusiastic citizens, we are on a chivalrous expedition to make up for our sins, not cowards who talk big on the streets. We are about to conquer the most terrible evil in the world. Please forgive us. Lord Joshua, we must kill those beasts who blasphemed the goddess. Lord Joshua will definitely become the next great knight of the green tide. We believe in Lord Joshua. Many citizens shouted in support and left the scene with ecstasy. Only the beautiful man, yes, now he can only be described as beautiful, spread his hands helplessly and looked at Gita. Look, Knight Gita, I advised you not to bring me to the goddess temple to pray. If I go in, let alone other people's opinions, but there will definitely be citizens who disturb the peace of the fairies in the lake. That's why I have to wait for you here. Are you satisfied now? Humphrey, this flamboyant man has an unusual charm. Knight Gita looked at the man in front of him indifferently, looking at this man who claimed to have escaped from the Broken Land and vowed to occupy the entire Broken Land with a chivalrous expedition. Distrust and disgust emerged in his heart. Gita himself was a forced deserter, a real knight, a tortured knight. It is impossible for him to show such a smile after escaping from his responsibilities. It is better to say that half a month ago, when he just came back, the knight who was like a frightened bird was more in line with the situation. But now, as the leader of the Bretonnian expeditionary fleet, Gita cannot blame the commander-in-chief of the entire chivalrous expeditionary army. He can only stubbornly reject Joshua's suggestion and form an expeditionary army with pure redemption knights. It was their inevitable responsibility to welcome the Holy Grail. It was their sin not to catch up with it at the first time. Now they even need mercenaries and mages as assistants. It was a shame among shames. Hey, Gita Knight. Looking at the Gita Knight who ignored him and walked towards the port silently, Joshua shouted behind him, I advised you from the bottom of my heart. Don't believe what you see in front of you when you arrive at the Broken Land. Although our plan is very perfect, please also pay attention that we are a team, not a pure revenge fleet. I know. Gita stopped and turned to look at the purple-eyed knight, and said stiffly. At the same time, at the border of the Chaos Ice Field, at the edge of the Stonehenge, a knight wearing a ribbon sneezed. Achoo! Can you catch a cold when you are protected by the Holy Grail? No. I just suddenly thought of a question. My nose is a little itchy. The young knight twisted his nose and looked at the huge construction site in front of him with some confusion. This is where they once galloped and defeated the demon army. There are rich elements of war and the concept of death, which is very suitable for the location of the heavenly fortress. However, with the knowledge about fairies in their minds, the younger knights who are not disturbed too much by the Lady of the Lake always can't help but fantasize while working, satisfy the wild imagination they have at this age. No, what's the difference between fairies and demons? I don't know. Maybe they look more deceptive. Can they be fucked? Brother, something is wrong. The people around looked at the thoughtful boy strangely, and the expression on their faces seemed to be a little odd. Chapter 52 Demon Shortage. Help us. At the edge of the Stonehenge, it is now difficult to see groups of demons sharpening their knives. With the blessing of the giant tree of life and the Holy Grail, it is actually hard to say that the Guardian Knights, those knights of Bretonnia who decided to use the Holy Grail and vitality to reorganize themselves into a new knightly order, look less human than the demons. The knights of the giant tree outpost now began to mix the bark of the Oak of Ages with steel to create a set of grotesque tree helmets. The war horses under their crotches also gradually twisted and evolved into antlers and green eyes as the vitality gradually twisted, and they looked tall and did not look like creatures from the human world. From a distance, they even looked like war fortresses. In an operation to hunt wasteland demons in the periphery, they even had a terrifying record of charging against the Bronze Bull Knights of Khorne demons, and they did not die alone while the other side was completely wiped out. Extraordinary vitality, inexhaustible energy, and the spell-like abilities given by the Wisdom Path and War Path differentiated by Leon. The Guardian Knights even have the combat power that is no less than that of the regular Knights of Bretonnia in the Badlands. Moreover, because of the influence of the Stonehenge, their impact even brought damage to their souls. In the Chaos Wasteland, even the servants of the Blood God have begun to feel fear and resistance. In the final analysis, the reason why these subspace creatures are fearless is that no matter what, as long as the concept does not disappear, they can be reborn in the concept. However, in front of the Stonehenge and Leon's inexhaustible desire to devour everything, All the demon's concepts and soul fragments will be forcibly taken away by Leon and turned into his food. Some demons have even begun to fearfully claim that Leon is the incarnation of emptiness and the embodiment of the destruction of the world. Although the concept itself will still exist after Leon devours, those things are completely new. It is completely different from the current posture. The demons dare not even think about what kind of weird things the demons will become after being devoured. So in this environment, Leon's hunting plan was affected a lot. Fortunately, although the construction time of the heavenly fortress is tight, it does not need to throw everything in at once. It takes time to build a beachhead suitable for luring people in, and it also takes time to hunt demons. But the premise is that the progress is normal. If these knights are still only concerned about their own pleasure, then Leon will give them a little strength to make them realize who is the real boss. You should kill demons. The life magic barrier at the giant tree outpost has been created. I have used magic and the Norse cans to build a complete resting place for you. You should kill demons for your honor, and kill more demons. But, sir, we are already working hard to kill demons. Work hard? Do you call that hard work? You are just enjoying the pleasure of charging in groups and against the enemy. You are just enjoying the glory of fighting against a strong enemy. Looking at the tall knight who seemed to be ashamed, Leon looked disappointed. After deciding to build the heavenly fortress, Leon's original construction plan was to kill and build at the same time, complementing each other, without any production line problems. As a result, when only 1/10 of the soul fragments were built, Leon was furious to find that there was a problem with the supply of soul fragments. The Norscans and Bretonians didn't kill many demons at all. Is this acceptable? You only kill a few hundred demons a day on average. How can you be worthy of me? This was the first time that Leon held a short private meeting. It was also the first time that Leon expressed his dissatisfaction in front of ordinary people. He was very dissatisfied with the performance of the Bretonian knights, or the guard knights. Although the achievements at the giant tree outpost were already remarkable, their next actions made Leon very annoyed. The promise you made to me was that you vowed to fight against chaos and would not disgrace the power of the Holy Grail. I trusted you and gave you the Holy Grail, but how did you give me back? What about after you got the Tree of Time? How could you only fight those big battles instead of running into the chaos wasteland to kill everyone you saw? Leon, with an angry face, looked at the ashamed knight in front of him and said loudly, "Each of you has unlimited energy and vitality, and each of you has my blessing. But ask yourself, are you collecting so-called information, waiting for the so-called big battlefield? But while you are pursuing honor, what are the demons doing? The demons are running away. They won't wait for you to slowly ask, do you want to have a big melee? No, they won't wait for you. The blood god might, but the others definitely won't. So we have to chase them and kill them. In the grasslands, in the mountains, in the snowfields, in the places where the wind of chaos magic is the most violent. Kill them one by one, no matter how many there are, how pitiful they look, or even if they are the aggregate of some positive emotions in the warp. No demon deserves sympathy or mercy. What you have to do is kill them one by one. Scattered demons must be killed, gathered demons must be killed even more, and fleeing demons must be killed even more. Within the sight range, or even within the perception range, as long as the wind of magic has a hint of the stench of demons, we must follow and kill them. Then after enjoying the honor, you will give me the fragments of your soul. Instead of finding an excuse to play the night battle game with them in the snowy plain, you have forgotten your original oath and even immersed yourself in the night game. What you have to do is never to treat this as a game, but to really hunt demons. I understand, my lord. I am ashamed. Looking at the thin and pale young man in front of him, but with a strong sense of power, the knight leader bowed his head respectfully. Under the dual irrigation of vitality and the Holy Grail, the once elegant leader of the knights has now almost merged with the giant tree armor. The tree marks on his armor spread, and there are even 2 fluorescent spots in his eye sockets. The supernatural posture formed by his height of more than 2.5 meters made him bow his head and admit his mistakes. The scene was extremely shocking, but the few people present did not show any special reaction. It was as if this was a very natural scene. It's good that you know it. Take my message and go back to explain it to your brothers. Your behavior can only be called a heroic game, not really hunting chaos demons. Yes, I understand, the huge tree knight said in a deep voice, even until he saluted respectfully and turned away. Not many people looked at him. This should make them move. Really? The knight actually chooses his opponents. What kind of knight is this? Can't they kill one by one when they see one? Do you know that there is a shortage of demons in the territory now? If there are not enough soul fragments and the ambush site is not built well, it will really kill a lot of people. Looking at the huge figure leaving, Leon sighed while sitting on the chair, and looked at Oliver, who had a calm expression, and showed that he knew nothing. Oliver, introduce Knight Greta and Knight Joshua. I know you know these two people. Chapter 53. What are you discussing? Leon sighed. His expression was full of pity. It seemed as if the kindness of the whole world was wrapped in his body. Leon said to Oliver worriedly, they are now confused. I don't know why they think this side is the evil to be conquered. They refuse to communicate and are now planning to rush here at full speed. If you still want to save them, then give all the information quickly. If possible, Leon still hopes to get these Bretonian knights as help. After all, from the changes in the knights, we can know that in fact, the human beings on this planet have an unimaginable ability to accept alienation and various supernatural transformations, and the power they possess is also very shocking. At least Leon really didn't think that he would have such a strange knights in his hands. His original plan was even to let Ulfric come back and lead the Norsecans to hunt down the unlucky demons everywhere. But now Ulfric is still doing propaganda and transfer work on the Norscan Peninsula, and hunting down demons depends entirely on the knights themselves. So for the entire chivalrous expedition fleet, Leon still hopes to recruit them to be his helpers. He still has too few people. Even if he has absorbed Norscan immigrants, the total population has not exceeded 3,000. Most Norscans do not like to leave their homes, and they also have concerns about the broken land and the chaos wasteland. Only after they have made a name for themselves after the war can these people believe that this is their home. Although the broken land is still quite famous in the mouths of demons. But those are demons, and they cannot be converted into population. In other words, the demons themselves are willing, but Leon does not want it. Their death will contribute much more than their contribution of surviving for who knows how many tens of thousands of years. So why not just kill them? So considering various aspects, Leon's only current population choice is still humans. Not only is it easy to adapt, but it also requires cheapness, fast updates, and good mutations. It is the best choice. So Leon is really concerned about the chivalrous expedition, but the answer he got did not make him very happy. I don't know much about Knight Joshua. He claims to have participated in the Green Tide and saved his lord, but no one can prove it except some local bards and his own letter of appointment. The Purple Ladies seem to have helped with this, but I don't know. The Purple Ladies refer to the wives of nobles, a union of some knights' ladies. They often exchange various inside information and are keen to make themselves more beautiful. In other words, this Knight Joshua may have been a person who pursued luxury and perfection from the beginning, but he is not a knight in the conventional sense. However, purple. I always feel that this resume and this color seem a bit wrong. Leon touched his chin thoughtfully and motioned Oliver to continue. After the perceptive knight bowed respectfully, he continued in a solemn but not intrusive voice, but Knight Gita is a relatively famous figure in our Bretonia. He was once the 4th place in the heavy knight team in the Kingdom tournament. He was once regarded as a role model for the Knights of the Kingdom of Bretonia. However, during the last fight against the Green Tide, his horse went crazy and took him away from the battlefield. Although he later killed his horse and returned on foot to join the battle, it was too late. After the war, he still chose to refuse the knight's coronation and always believed that he was guilty. The goddess did not blame him, but the protection of the Lady of the Lake and magic made him feel that he was not worthy of this honor. So he has been immersed in guilt all this time. This time he may be regarded as his path to redemption. So he chose to participate in this chivalrous expedition, Oliver said softly, making Leon nod thoughtfully. In other words, this is a jerk who doesn't care about reality, doesn't care about relatives and friends, just lives in his own dream. and does whatever it takes for his dream. If you insist on understanding it this way, yes, okay, then you can go. I'll think about it. Waving his hand to let Oliver leave, Leon continued to float in the observatory, looking at the interlaced star tracks, and began to think about the possibility of the enemy collapsing after direct beheading. But soon Leon found pessimistically that it was difficult for the Knights of Bretonnia or the mercenaries suspected of chaos believers to have any strong impact on them after simple beheading. Only on the battlefield, using unimaginable attacks to break through their front line, can their psychological defenses collapse. Although this is what Leon and his generals are good at, Leon himself doesn't like to do this. We are all human beings. Isn't it good to live well and contribute to ourselves? At this point, let's just take a look at the spectacle first. Okay, now it's time to see what my trustworthy knights are discussing. After Leon connected to the magic sentry, he saw a serious young knight giving an impassioned speech to the people around him. But I think the fairies' butts are pretty good, right? The young knight looked serious, and the knights around him also showed an expression of listening and approval, giving the scene a sense of academic discussion. Our knowledge also says that the fairies' transformed posture will be very beautiful, and before completing the prank, they will perform very perfectly. So, then why don't we just fuck it without getting emotional, then kill it when things are almost done? Perfect solution to the problem. Apostrophe ... Oh my god. Cultural progress is urgent. What is this? Although adolescent boys are full of 3 palaces, 6 courtyards and 72 concubines in their hearts, you are too. Should we wait for the Norse women and children to come and hold a blind date meeting or something? If this feeling continues, this place may really become a gathering place for perverted ghosts. Listening to the delusions of these young knights who were tricked into coming by the chivalrous expedition, Leon's mind was filled with the illusions of the existence of fairies that the energetic young men in adolescence were discussing enthusiastically, and he was shocked. But after being shocked, Leon thought for a while. But it seems that it is not impossible. It seems that it is okay to trick them into killing them and adding some soul fragments. It just so happens that everything is missing now. Looking at the wonderland that is gradually evolving in illusion and carved by runes, Leon touched his chin in the observatory and fell into deep thought. Chapter 54, Death of the Fairy, Fool's Beach. Apostrophe Fairies are enemies, not things that release desires. Kill them when you see them, never hide them. There are Norse tribes settled in the gods' plains. You can have normal interactions, instead of distorting your spirit. You are knights, not thugs. You should have a conscience, instead of being in cahoots with the monsters of the warp. Clear your mind, raise your will, and don't let desire capture you. Looking at the bright red slogan inserted on the construction site, all the young knights present had no expression on their faces, just pretending that this matter had not been said to them. When he delegated the control authority and no longer manipulated everyone's will alone, Leon made 2 discoveries. The first discovery was that everyone's subjective initiative increased a lot. People in the Broken Land began to have a certain breath of life. Instead of working according to Leon's settings as before, everyone played their best value. Instead, they had a certain amount of leisure, even casual space. But the price was the second discovery, because there was really nothing in the Broken Land. Serfs are easy to deal with. They have lived like this all their lives, and they are already very satisfied. But the knights have no entertainment programs, no normal cultural development. That is really suffocating. The pursuit of night duels with demons and running directly to the Chaos Wasteland to find demons for the so-called honor charge has already begun to emerge. Now the performance of these young knights has also made Leon realize his negligence. Culture can be on par with scientific research because scientific research enriches people's appearance, while culture enriches people's hearts. But here is another small, non-problematic problem for Leon. Your current cultural output value. 6. What should I do? Although everyone has some intelligence, they are completely uncultured. At the beginning of work, facing those knights who were working with a tense face and expressionless faces pretending that nothing had happened, Leon's projection on the cliff couldn't help but cover his face. He didn't dare to think, nor did he dare to read what these young knights were thinking because of boredom and lack of cultural spirit. After all, They couldn't help but think about the fairy spirits. To be honest, if a thorough re-examination was really carried out, Leon had no doubt that these shameful nights would explode with him. So Leon was merciful, and he still opened the portal to the fairy world. But Leon also felt that people couldn't, or at least shouldn't. Although he himself didn't think he was a good person, the fairy spirits were first fucked and then killed, which was a bit challenging Leon's bottom line of ethics. If he could do such a thing, he didn't dare to imagine what kind of civilization he was. So out of the concept of moral ethics, Leon just opened the gate to the fairy world, and then let the knights stand by the door and cut them down as they saw them. Fucking people was still too much, but if it satisfied the spiritual emptiness, it was acceptable to kill them directly. Of course, with a qualified assembly line and Leon's full surveillance, these spiritually empty knights didn't do anything weird. The various indicators and the number of people have been rising steadily. The bodies of the immortals who were chopped to death have also been disassembled into the talismans of the heavenly fortress, and the illusory fortress that seems to be non-existent has been continuously built on the open space. Each of these immortals can provide dozens to hundreds of soul fragments, which is much more useful than demons. Leon has also thought about this. It is probably because demons often come back to die, and the soul fragments have long been dilapidated. But the immortals have not died many times, so they are still fresh. But in short, after a few days, when Leon gradually modified the terrain of the cliff and created a shallow beach at the edge of the stone circle, the heavenly fortress was finally built. Your wonder has been built. Because of your behavior, your reputation in the immortal world is hatred. Please note that your actions will lead to an immeasurable future. Due to the rebirth pool in the immortal portal, the illusory soldiers of the heavenly fortress have been further strengthened. They will be regarded as having magic weapons and soul attack capabilities. Well, there is one more enemy. However, it is not healthy to have more enemies in this world. Leon quickly put the news behind his mind, and then began to carefully carve out the area he named Fool's Beach, striving to make the Knights of Britannia take the bait accurately. In order to carry out strategic fraud, Leon spent a lot of thought on this speech. The first thing is to raise the surrounding coastline, and place some fragmented beaches full of reefs in some areas. Although it seems that there are many choices on the surface, in fact, there is only this one that can be chosen. And because it is at the edge of the Stonehenge, Leon deliberately guided the wind of magic to do some camouflage. Through the manipulation of the range of the Stonehenge and the interference of the chaos magic, Leon pretended that this part of the shallows was a shallow that had just been corroded and collapsed after the magic of the chaos wasteland retreated. It is a beach that has only appeared recently, and it seems that no one has even detected it. Only such a perfect disguise can make those knights who look old-fashioned and conservative, but in fact, who knows what they are like inside, take the bait without hesitation. After all, the military situation was extremely urgent. If we didn't choose this marginal area and went deeper, wouldn't the suddenness and pincer attack of the chivalrous expedition be meaningless? The stage has been set, and it's time to give a signal. I hope those psychic aggregates have a feedback channel. I have begun to take one step at a time and express my aggression against the chaos wasteland, so the chivalrous expedition will come soon. Looking at the shallows that have been built and the heavenly fortress that is looming in the ruins around the mountains, Leon stretched out his hand to the sky wrapped in chaos and snapped his fingers lightly. Paw under the eyes of everyone, the Holy Grail exuded extremely beautiful colors, gradually twisting and rotating in Leon's will, spreading a unique Holy Grail breath to the sky. The invisible turned into a tangible force that shook the entire sky, and the wind of magic was once again interfered by the strong rainbow light, differentiating the magnificent colors of the aurora in the sky. The torn wounds in the Stonehenge also trembled and let out an indescribable howl, even causing the whole world to tremble again. Almost at the same time, Greta and Joshua of Britannia raised their heads. They could feel that their hearts, or what they thought was their hearts, began to yearn. They felt that the mission seemed to be calling them. Whether it was the desire for the red glorious death or the lavender honor, they naturally thought in their hearts that the time had come. At the call of the goddess, it was time to launch an expedition. They thought, If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Player's Thoughts, August 8, 2614, Cologne Harbor. Fleets hung with bright red ribbons and bronze decorations are gathering at the harbor. The unblessed chivalrous expedition and the cursed expedition are gathering in this largest port. The cursed expedition is the official name for this chivalrous expedition. There is a reason for this. The fairies in the lake did not bless this chivalrous expedition, because it was not an expeditionary force recruited by the Night King, but a spontaneous action by the local honorary knights and quasi-knights. It is the atonement of the Knights of Gata and Joshua. And because the Holy Grail has not been brought back, they will not bless these fleets for religious reasons. The entire chivalrous expedition fleet will launch a large-scale expedition to the Broken Land without the blessing of the gods. They even collected food and supplies donated by other forces and shuttled across the iced sea. Because Britannia and the Norse peninsula are across the sea from each other, some impatient outpost fleets have begun to clear out the Norsemen on the Norse peninsula to pave the way for the chivalrous expedition. This urgency, not for the knights, is just an expedition to prove themselves, and it was eventually called the Cursed Expedition. However, this kind of scattered expedition, which is even a little ridiculous in the eyes of the officials of the old world, is an unattainable dream in the eyes of many groups and forces. Just setting sail, the entire port is full of ribbons. As the ships gradually left the port, huge flags and canvas began to rise, and with them came the chants of farmers and small nobles on the shore to bless this expedition, and the ships began to flash with magical lights one by one. It is these glories that give these strange-looking ships extraordinary bearing capacity, impact resistance, and even self-repair capabilities. Fleets without magic are unqualified in this world. Even without magic, you must have faith and respect for the gods, because only in this way, the ocean will not raise huge waves, and the wind of magic will not tear your fleet apart in an instant. And ships that rely purely on so-called technology and design will be torn into pieces by the wind and waves and sea monsters in anger within a dozen years. Every time I see this scene, I feel a pang of jealousy. Sitting on the top floor of the port tower, Edward looked at the fleet that was sailing out of the port and gathering with ribbons, and narrowed his eyes with some displeasure. Their fleet is protected by the gods, and it is no different from breaking our fleet to dismantle building blocks. Their bodies are also blessed by faith, and their own abilities are far superior to normal people. Why is it so easy for them to do what we can only do here with some money and interests? Because they have lived here all their lives, and we are on the other side. What's more, the gods here don't think much of us. Beside Edward, Anderson, the player in charge of official liaison and also the coordinator of this chivalrous expedition, was wearing a luxurious dress and holding a bottle of fine wine. Sitting next to Edward, using a rotor to open the cork, the mellow fragrance blessed by the fairy of the lake, which was impossible to appear in the original world, filled the air, making the originally damp room seem noble and elegant. The two picked up the glass, poured out the wine, clinked it, looked at the fleet in the distance, and sighed. Regarding the Gata Knight, we can't intervene anyway. Shaking the red wine glass, Anderson looked at the fleet leaving and said softly, I feel that there is something wrong with that person. Although he has begun his own oath and curse, his power is still strong, and he has recently loved Red and often hurts others during training. He has certain bloodthirsty symptoms. This symptom is very obvious, or in other words, it is very obvious to the current players in the old world. Hearing this, Edward frowned. Do you think he is contaminated by chaos? Or is there some other reason? The fairy of the lake didn't say chaos contamination, so there must be no problem. Anderson shook his head. After all, the power of the Lady of the Lake is much greater than that of the Chaos Gods. If the Chaos Gods were so powerful, how could they spread across the icefield? Wouldn't they have established a nation long ago? Isn't that the case in Northrend? Isn't it said that the Chaos Gods are the embodiment of the evil thoughts of all intelligent creatures, and they don't care about the environment? That's just talk. How can a real intelligent creature not like a normal life and a beautiful environment, who would like to live a hard life in that kind of ice and snow? They just can't get by. It's the same everywhere else. And the Chaos Gods are probably the same. Anderson shook his head casually. They took all the stories and related things from all the major regions to confirm this, except for the Elves' Forever Meat Island, which for some reason could not be penetrated at all, and the weird rainforests full of temples. Other human countries in the old world, even those evil races and strange countries, basically did not regard the Chaos Gods as some irresistible powerful enemies. Even the Empire, which depicts the most terrifying image of the Chaos Gods, basically joined hands with Kislev to resist the Norse Kansan Chaos Gods believers who went south to plunder, and nothing major happened for so many years. Therefore, based on multiple investigations and acceptance, as well as evidence from other regions, players generally believe that the Chaos Gods are indeed terrifying, but their divine power is not as good as that of other gods. Rather than being a world distortion point or a terrible villain that destroys the world, it looks more like some god-hated things that can't make it and are furious at the edge of the world. With such a cognition, the gifts and various behaviors of chaos look no different from secretly poaching people. If you are really that powerful, people would have come to serve you long ago. How could there be so many things? As for the so-called power of destruction, which is twisted into an inhuman posture, players have never seen such a high-end scene, so they just think it is bragging. Just think about it normally. Your side is sacred and noble, and the enemy looks ugly and hateful. Isn't that a normal operation? How could anyone really record it truthfully? It's ridiculous to think about it. It must be a loss to be described like that. So I think that the chivalrous expedition will definitely succeed. After all, the power of the Lady of the Lake is stronger than that of the Chaos Gods. Although the knights voluntarily abandoned it, there is still time. Erosion takes time anyway, Anderson said. Even if the Gatanite fell and became a demon, it must have been after the chivalrous expedition, or at the end of the chivalrous expedition. Time is still a bit advantageous for us. In detail, we can wait until Knight Joshua takes the follow-up large force to act together. And it just so happens that he is arranging a consolation dinner recently. Shall we go together? Go to the dinner together? Are you sure you are not jealous of those ladies and young ladies? That is the only place that can look up to us. Do we really intend to be cannon fodder in the name of knights in the chivalrous expedition? Don't forget our original intention. You can just look at these things. The core is still in the Hope City in the north. We came out of the drinking party, so we can't lose points in front of those ladies. We have to be more energetic at night to satisfy those women. Anderson tapped his head, pointed at the lavender dinner invitation, looked at Edward who understood what he meant, and smiled mysteriously. Chapter 56 The Devil Laughs. The two leaders of the chivalrous expedition, Knight Gata and Knight Joshua, are very at odds with each other, which is very clear to the people in Cologne who are paying attention to the chivalrous expedition. But for everyone, the division of labor between the two is actually very clear. As a sinful knight, Knight Gata actually has great appeal, and has a group of elite fighting brothers among the lower-level knights. However, it is impossible for them to gather the supplies to the Broken Land by themselves. It just so happens that Knight Joshua brought news about the Holy Grail, and he is good at dancing with long sleeves, often wandering among various forces in exchange for various personal relationships and related interests. It is precisely because of Knight Joshua's provocation that this chivalrous expedition has reached an unprecedented scale in the folk chivalrous expedition. But this also means that Knight Joshua rarely appears in formal combat occasions. He always appears late at night, bringing noble ladies and entertainment teams, and creating one noisy dinner after another in Cologne. In the previous 7 days, he had hosted banquets for the castle mages, the Gulf mercenaries, and the lords and knights of several knight orders. The players didn't even think they would be invited at first. After all, their species and origins were unclear, and it was natural for them to be discriminated against. But Joshua did not hesitate to issue his purple invitations. When the players accepted the invitations and began to arrive at the secret room with the help of the purple servants during the double moon silence, they realized why Knight Joshua and his companions always kept silent about their gatherings. "Welcome, welcome," Mysterious players. Knight Joshua, naked and wearing a purple veil, and wearing a light golden crown, looked at the stunned players with a strange smile. Although you don't know where you come from, nor what you want, and even your existence is very strange, this does not prevent us from reaching an agreement. Tonight's dinner is my return for your support. Please don't refuse. Sitting elegantly on the golden chair, Joshua looked at the players and snapped his fingers. In the next moment, an invisible curtain slowly opened. There were chaotic lights all around, but there was a strange beauty. On the 6 lavender stages, different bands and music, different dances and singing voices, different interpretations and performances, presenting a three-dimensional performance that far exceeds modern entertainment methods. There are extravagant and luxurious decorations everywhere, and unimaginable charm and shocking performances everywhere. Looking at all this, Edward, who was invited as one of the player representatives, couldn't help but sigh. Is this also the miracle of the Lady of the Lake? The Lady of the Lake? Joshua, who was pouring wine, was stunned. Not only Joshua, but also the dancing girls, the singers, and the musicians were all stunned. Under the lavender curtain, they looked at the drunken players in amazement. Edward, who was being watched by all eyes, did not feel anything was wrong. Instead, he staggered to Joshua with a bottle of wine in his hand and half knelt down to express his loyalty. The Lady of the Lake is indeed a kind lady. Such a powerful divine power is naturally tolerant of these things. I should have thought of it long ago. The Chaos Gods are just a group of weak gods. They only use terror and weirdness to gather believers. But the Lady of the Lake represents the place where civilization is. The Chaos Gods are the weakest gods, weaker than any other gods, isn't it? The drunk Edward looked around blankly and said honestly, if the Chaos Gods are really strong, why do they leave all these luxurious things and manipulate the Norsemen to attack? Puff. Hee hee. Ha 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 ha. Looking at the player whose expression did not seem to be fake, Joshua's expression management gradually collapsed. You said it well. You said it well. It's so right. Why can't I think of such words? Ha 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 ha. Sure enough, words from the heart can move people the most. Wiping away the tears from the corners of his eyes, Joshua patted Edward's shoulder, who looked confused, as if he couldn't bear it. Not only Joshua, but even the atmosphere group around him burst into laughter. The happy atmosphere was so contagious that Edward also laughed along. After several minutes, Joshua, who was almost out of breath from laughing, slapped his thigh and motioned Edward to come over to talk further. You are good, really good, so good. I think that is the best language I have ever heard in my life. I decided not to discriminate against you players, because you are so interesting. I will promote you to the outer area of the Second Fleet, and I will also carve the formation and magic runes for you. And all you have to do is help us coordinate the position, and then witness our glory and our joy. It's simple, isn't it? Patting Edward's cheek and looking at the captain's flattering look, Joshua laughed heartily again, and the luxurious and extravagant scenery around him set off a lavender curtain. The feast is about to begin, and all the characters have taken their seats. The dark gods are very amused by a certain individual who suddenly jumped onto the stage. In fact, they never mind having one more chess player on the stage, because this may bring different fun. For example, these players are fun. Here, to witness our friendship, drink this glass of wine. Don't let us down. Yes, yes. Looking at the pure purple wine, Edward smiled respectfully and drank it without hesitation. For players, there is nothing to be afraid of. Here are a group of trustworthy allies. Although it looks luxurious, what's the big deal? In Britannia, nights are like this. Facing Edward's bowl drinking the purple liquid in the golden cup, Joshua couldn't help but raise his head and laughed. Soon, amid the laughter of the crowd, a group of pure and beautiful girls with good figures and soft waists like snakes walked to the players with charming smiles. The music played again, and the lust, body fluids and lavender mist covered the secret room, making it steam with a mysterious and corrupt atmosphere. This is an act expressly prohibited by the teachings of the goddess. What is even more bizarre is that the temple of the most trusted goddess of the lake did not react at all. The tall statue looked at everything under its feet with mercy, seemingly unable to see the corrupted fruit happening in the small private room. Only in the distance, inside the cabin that had begun to move towards the broken land, in the blood-filled arena, the Gitanite opened his eyes with disgust. Those beasts will definitely enjoy themselves at this time. What a bunch of cowards. Chapter 57, Building an Army with Blood. Throw all the bodies of the losers into the ocean and feed them. Put the losers in the cages. Only the winners can eat normally. We are a group of sinners. There is no need to care about those red tapes. While Galundi was reveling every night, the cursed fleet on the ocean was also carrying out its own entertainment activities. Blood splashed everywhere on the battlefield, splashing the yellow sand with a layer of black iron color. Dozens of young people with white eyes and chopped into pieces were thrown into bags by the Red Service staff, who came forward like checking garbage, and then prepared to throw them into the sea along the edge of the ship, and dark red flowers floated on the sea surface. They are all a group of whimsical serfs, a group of speculators who want to take the opportunity to gain honor and want to become so-called heroes. They don't deserve to be on this ship. People who are not strong enough will always be howlers under the giant tax. If you want honor, you can only get it with blood and swords. It is a shame to simply want to participate in the expedition and then gain honor. I repeat, you serfs. The Gothic knight, who was wearing black and red armor and rubbing the fangs of his axe with a whetstone until sparks flew, looked at the young men in front of him indifferently and said in a hoarse voice, "I know what you are here for. You are just a group of incompetent thieves who want to steal the glory that belongs to the knights. You participated in this chivalrous expedition just to make your descendants and the people around you happy, and you didn't even know why you followed in the heat of the moment. You are incompetent, you are cowardly, and you have no fighting ability. Instead of letting you disrupt the formation because of fear on the battlefield, it is better to select the best among you, use your blood to awaken your fighting instinct, and use your abilities in exchange for a chance to survive. You were originally just a group of serfs without masters who fled in all directions. Under the promise of the previous Night King, you became so-called free people. But do you think you can be compared with us like this? No, you still need to prove that you are the most powerful one." Wearing heavy steel armor, the red anger in his eyes seemed to have turned into a physical entity, making this man look at the serfs in front of him, who seemed a little timid but a little agitated with great anger. Of course he was very angry. He was very angry when Gitanite walked down from the battlefield. As a knight, he has always pursued a death full of blood and honor. But the war horse related to his life thought that he would definitely die there and ran away privately. He absolutely could not accept such a result, so he killed the war horse that was like half of his body, smeared the blood on his forehead and heart, and returned to the battlefield to kill all the enemies. But there was no enemy. If you miss that battlefield, you miss it. Such an opportunity only comes once in this life, and if you run away, you run away. That means there is nothing. Such a result made him really fall into madness. He must wash away his sins and shame, this humiliation of not being able to fight, this shame of being abandoned, must be washed away with blood. And looking at those serfs, the anger in Gitanite's heart became even hotter and stronger. Look at these slaves. They were originally the ones he was protecting, but what about now? These slaves actually wanted to fight alongside him, and even wanted to become his fighting brothers. What a shame this was. Just thinking about it made Gitanite feel that his brain was full of blood. The strong anger and shame were about to burn his body, stick his armor to his skin, and make his blood and anger gush out of his eyes and turn into blood and tears. Therefore, the shame must be washed away. Those blasphemers and those restless monsters must be eliminated one by one. Prove yourself. Prove that you are a useful person. Just like saying to the serfs in front of him, whose skin was gradually turning red and whose eyes had a fanatical sense of mission, Gitanite also felt that his voice was like an invisible wall teaching him, only blood can please the gods. Only strength and fighting can prove everything. Monsters like those in Goruni, who only know how to enjoy dying on women's bellies, will never be warriors. As for us, we will fight for our own interests with blood and swords. Go kill those heretics, slaughter those creatures, and cast all the heads into Jinquin. We must prove our strength. So now, you fight. Only the final winner can become mine. Feeling the shame and anger engraved in his heart as if he was going crazy, Feeling the almost explosive power and ability brought by the strong anger, the Gitanite growled and said the words he was most reluctant to say. Companion, ha, a companion who came out of a surf. Just saying it, the anger and shame made him instantly chop out an axe and smash the sawtooth gun in his hand to the ground. The deafening sound was like a gong. The serfs with red eyes were picking up their weapons and fighting each other wantonly on the specially arranged battlefield, spilling blood in the area. Gitanite silently left here with his axe and gun, and locked himself in the deepest part of the captain's room. The humiliation and anger of having to surrender seemed to become his nourishment. It made him bigger and bigger in the dark and closed captain's room, and his anger and filled power rose higher and higher. In the darkness, Gitanite felt that he seemed to be living more and more truly than ever before. It was as if his previous life was fake. This strong sense of shame and anger made him unable to help but grab his armor and keep grabbing it. The nails broke and wore to the bones, and the blood stained the dark red armor that was originally in the Bretonian style into a twisted and dark appearance. As if it were a living thing, the broken meat, nails and blood were mixed on it, forming a filthy and terrifying picture. This mutation lasted for several days until a knock on the door woke him up from the mutation. "Sir," the voice outside the cabin said, "we have arrived at the edge of the Chaos Sea according to the route, but we have observed an excellent landing site. May I ask if we should go ashore directly at this time? Take me there." A breath of rusty flame spurted out of his mouth, and his burning eyes slowly raised from the darkness. The huge chainsaw axe was held in his hand, allowing his figure to appear in the darkness. The man with rusty armor, bloodstains all over his body, and red eyes was spewing a stream of flames in the cabin. He took his heavy steps, and his 3-meter-tall body bent out of the cabin. He subconsciously narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction pointed by the red servant in front of him. In front of them, a huge crack that made people feel terrified from the soul after seeing it was emitting a crazy roar in the sky that mortals could not hear. "That is the wound of the world." Looking at the huge crack, Gitanite couldn't help but mutter in a low voice. Chapter 58, Evil Spirit. The wound of the world. That is the name of the big rift that appeared above the broken land. Among all the magic observation methods, the huge rift is like the wound of the world, greedily absorbing all the chaotic magic winds that appear, and dissipating in the closed space for unknown reasons. This is an extremely terrifying thing. Even if the magic wind is used, it will only reduce the concentration around it, and will not cause the magic wind itself to dissipate. But on the side of the wound of the world, the existence of the magic wind is directly blank. There is an unimaginable existence that swallowed it all. The wizards think that this should be a rare natural phenomenon, like a crack in the world. But now, under the real huge wound, you can feel the greatness of the natural force and the insignificance of your own power. What they have to do is to conquer the master of the wound of the world, the coward who blasphemed the goddess and the meaning of war. What they have to do is to tear up all those wizard tricks and return everything to the starting point. "Sir, we have found the landing point." "Already found it?" "Yes. It is at the edge of the world that was stretched out by the wound." There are obvious traces. Wearing a light blue woven robe, the squire who served as the pilot and the wizard were humbly lowering their heads. Only the sapphires on their fingertips reflected a light that made people feel a little upset. "Our events team has sent a message. It should be the result of the cracks caused by the world's wound and the bombardment of the magic wind. We have seen many similar gaps, but they are all full of reefs and rubble. Only the largest gap at the edge can barely support our landing. The broken land is full of towering cliffs. This is recorded in the records, sir. If Lord Joshua is not lying, I am afraid that the beach that Lord Joshua saw is the only landing port in the entire broken land. Should we take the risk of landing in such a place?" The wizard squire bowed his body and obeyed as usual. But for some reason, looking at the azure individual, Gita felt upset in his heart and waved his hand with some dissatisfaction. "Okay, no need to say more. Since it's new, let's go there." Although Joshua is a waste, it's almost certain that the great wizard has set a trap there. Since you can confirm that this is a new area, it's just the right place to ambush the criminals. "But, my lord, although we haven't found any traces of man-made things, it's dangerous to stay at the junction of the Chaos Wasteland. We may encounter some problems, I said. Speed is of the essence. Go over now. Your will, my lord. The wizard's entourage bowed his head respectfully and faithfully carried out Gita's will, but somehow, Gita felt a little unhappy and a little dizzy. He shook his huge head in dissatisfaction, puffed out a puff of black smoke, walked out of the room and looked at the positions built around him on the beach, with countless anger and irritability in his heart. He didn't notice that the transition was so smooth, as if several days had disappeared directly in his mind. Gita just walked on the beach irritably, looking at the surrounding buildings. His heart was burning with anger. Why don't you attack? Why don't you kill those rubbish? Why are they still stationed here? All kinds of confusion and doubts entangled in his brain, and finally turned into a question that Gita Knight took for granted. Why is he still here? Am I afraid of something? A flash of light flashed through his mind like lightning, and Gita looked towards the cliff fiercely. At that moment, a golden lightning flashed across the night sky, making a terrifying explosion. What is that? Just a glimpse. Gita imprinted an unimaginable figure on his retina. It was a giant monster. No, it could also be a human, but it felt like a twisted giant monster. At least Gita felt that the guy was probably not a human, although in Gita's cognition, he had become huge because of his beliefs and moral support. The figure he saw between the flashes was even more terrifying. He was about the same height as himself, but compared to Gita's festering and thin armor, the steel armor that the terrifying creature wore, which looked like a simple bark, was like a wall. A pair of faint light blue fluorescent lights permeated from the helmet that was almost several dozen centimeters thick, staring at Gita like a nightmare. After the golden lightning flashed, Gita subconsciously shook his head and looked towards the cliff again, but he didn't see any figure. Is it an illusion? Is it an illusion that I saw? Gita subconsciously turned around and looked at the tiny buildings in the dark, questioning his soldiers. Hey, did you see a giant monster on the cliff just now? No, sir. The soldier in the shadow lowered his head and said obediently, we just saw you suddenly look over the hilltop, and then we were stunned. There was nothing over there. Say it again. Didn't you see the monster on the hilltop? Sir, there was nothing over there. The soldier slowly raised his head, and his blank face without any facial features turned to Gita, who suddenly stiffened, and a wronged voice came out from the skin. Because we can't see anything, sir. This is the end you led us to. How can you ask us what we see? We are already blind. What can we see? Boom. Looking at the horrified soldier, Gita's hair stood on end, and in the next moment, he felt that the thunderous light seemed to bring something. He didn't care about those soldiers without facial features, and subconsciously turned around and drew his weapon. He was scared. In this inexplicable and bizarre world, Gita felt a shudder from the bottom of his heart. He didn't even see the visitor clearly, but he let out a sharp, woman-like roar. Who is it? That evil spirit, that huge and unimaginable evil spirit, was carrying a huge axe and spear that was as big as the house they built, riding a terrifying monster that was 2 people tall, standing quietly behind him and overlooking his army. 2 deep light blue lights flickered behind the armor, and the dark brown shield that was even taller and heavier than a whole person was like an arm shield in its hand. The terrifying aura even made the Gita Knight with red eyes subconsciously forget to breathe, and looked at the giant beast standing in the center of the camp with some horror. Giant Tree Knight, come to greet. A dull voice came from the huge steel monster, and the huge axe and spear was raised high to the sky with one hand. Boom! Exclamation mark. With a deafening roar, golden lightning instantly struck the monster. The terrifying beast, which was at least 5 meters tall, was wrapped in golden lightning all over its body. In this dark storm, the axe and spear were surrounded by golden lightning. Under the gaze of Gita Knight, they swept through their army mercilessly. In just a moment, Gita Knight felt that the world was rolling up, and only countless blood-red mud bloomed on the rocks on the ground. In Gita Knight's hazy consciousness, only the roar of lightning left a disdainful voice. Traitors. I'm not a traitor. You are. With a miserable howl, Gita suddenly sat up from the bed, gasping for breath, and looked at everything around him anxiously. You look like you have had that nightmare again, my lord. The wizard attendant with azure eyes sat by the bed, stroking the azure crystal and lighting a candle. In the dark night, the trustworthy servant humbly bowed to the panting Gitanite. His 2 shining eyes seemed to have magic power, and he said softly, "This is the 3rd day. If you don't mind, can you let me interpret your dream for you?" Chapter 59 Infinite Loop Nightmare. The entire camp was silent, with only the sound of wind and rain outside sounding a bit greasy and reassuring. This was the 3rd day since the chivalrous expedition fleet arrived in this area. In fact, from the very beginning, their progress had some differences from the dream. For example, they did not actually sail to this area freely, but because the storm in the Chaos Wasteland was too terrifying, they were forced to stay in this area. And although an army was trained on the entire ship, they couldn't even get out of this pass, because the chaos storm was raging wildly, and the wind of magic was everywhere. Even by the standards of Gitanite, the environment here was a bit too headache. They could only stay in this area, and this stay lasted for 3 days. They set up outposts and observation points, dragged their ships into the shallow bay, and then did not send signals to the fleet according to the rules. The reason is simple. Just like now, Gitanite fell into a terrible nightmare. Not only Gitanite, but everyone fell into this desperate illusion. They would dream of becoming brave and powerful knights, and finally reaching the beach, only to find that they were surrounded by a group of green and gold knights. Those knights were even more powerful than the giants they imagined, and more terrifying than the most terrifying monsters they saw in their dreams. They manipulated thunder and lightning, and had endless anger towards heretics and traitors. When they drove the charge, even the earth itself was shaking violently, as if it was afraid of their will. In 3 days, no one had a good sleep. In this case, let alone charging as a helper, it was good enough not to give up their heads. So the Gitanite decided to rest in place, but even until now, they have not had any good results. No one knows why this happened, and no one knows how to get out of that nightmare. Everyone can only feel a kind of terror, a completely indescribable terror strangling their throats. Even at the beginning, the Gitanite dared to resist, but now, the fear has penetrated into the bone marrow. Why is this happening? Do you need my help, sir? The wizard attendant, who was lighting candles and filling the room with blue light, turned around and smiled at the panting Gitanite. Looking at the blue figure, the Gitanite instinctively felt more and more irritated. The huge knight scratched his body and made bloody marks, and growled, "If it weren't for the need to figure out what happened here, I would have killed you for talking like this. Now tell me everything you know, hurry up. This should be the influence of the wind of chaos magic, sir." Not paying attention to the Gitanite's threat, the wizard attendant sat on the chair and smiled well-mannered. "Whether it is the current blockade zone, the beach we see, the surrounding environment, everything nearby, and even our future, they are all affected by the wind of chaos magic." The wind of chaos magic? Yes, the pilot and wizard attendant, who has a hooked nose like a falcon and is trusted by the Gitanite very much, put down the light blue crystal in his hand and said very respectfully, "Although we are at the edge of the wound of the world, we will still be disturbed by the wind of chaos. If there is no natural barrier, the wind of chaos will quickly turn us into irrational chaos eggs. This is why we have never been able to attack the Chaos Wasteland. Because this power is too changeable, people have no way to understand it, and there is no way to try to analyze it. Everything here is so brilliant and changing, which is why everything happens. If it were inside the wound of the world, everything inside would have been stabilized by will. So it looks very stable, but it's different in this edge area. Everything here is changing, and it is even possible that some future fragments will be sent to our brains like now." The voice of the mage's attendant was very gentle, with a kind of bewitching magic. Although there was no power to show, people would inexplicably believe his words when they saw this person talking. This is the power from knowledge and magic. And with such trust, the eyes of the mage's attendant seemed to become brighter and brighter under the light of the pale blue candlelight. Looking at the huge knight in front of him, he sincerely made a series of gentle and understandable voices. "Under the power of the wind of chaotic magic, our dreams are often silhouettes of the future. We may fail again and again in the future world. This pain and torture has turned into a warning signal in this magic wind, and is imprinting the painful scene in our brains. It's better to go back first, Sir, it's not a good choice to fight here. Our souls have warned us countless times that we should go back to where we are going. It's the best choice to reunite with Lord Joshua and then launch an attack here in an upright manner, in the name of wisdom. I am not lying, sir." The wizard squire's eyes were blue, and his voice was soft and had a hint of loyalty. However, when the Kittanite, who was originally irritable and angry, heard that he was going to reunite with Joshua, the man was relieved and sat up from the bed. Then he punched the wizard's squire in the face without hesitation. That heavy punch was like a bombardment, instantly turning the head of the respectful wizard into an exploding blood-colored water ball. The headless body immediately fell to the ground, and the nerves twitched instinctively. The blood-stained Kittanite looked at the fallen body and spat with disdain. "Cowardly behavior. Cowardly behavior. You actually want to beg for mercy from those lowly people because of such a thing. This behavior is a cowardly behavior. You can never convince me." Despicable wizard. Looking at the blood on the ground, Kittanite felt a sense of peace from his soul. Yes, this is what they want. At the same time, in the observatory, Leon subconsciously raised his head. The slander of the God of Wisdom has been exposed. The believers of the God of War will proceed according to the original plan. What is all this? The God of Change told the truth and planned to let people bypass my trap, and then the God of War refused to listen. Looking at the results recorded in his own head, Liang scratched his head in confusion, feeling that something seemed a little unusual. Chapter 60, Encircled by Friendly Forces. Your civilization shaping has begun. The chivalrous expedition has launched an attack on your city. The number of people in this chivalrous expedition is 45,000. Originally it should be 5,000. Due to special reasons, your enemies will get the help of the God of Struggle during the chivalrous expedition. Due to special reasons, your enemies will get the help of the God of Life during the chivalrous expedition. Due to special reasons, your enemies will get the help of the God of Joy during the chivalrous expedition. Due to special reasons, your enemies will get the help of the God of Wisdom during the chivalrous expedition. Factions that regard you as hatred will choose to attack at this time. The difficulty of this civilization-shaping crisis is the highest level. The civilization characteristics shaped after this crisis will be regarded as the highest level civilization characteristics. The civilization characteristics shaped after this crisis will eliminate all negative effects. Please note that this is a war of the times. It is a test that you must face. A civilization can succumb, but it can never cut off its roots. Protect your culture and city, and meet your final test. Very scary. Just from the numbers and the related red warnings, it can be seen that this operation is definitely not a joke. Otherwise, Leon would not have given up his series of scientific research and related tasks for a short time, and began to prepare for the fortress complex such as the Fairy Fortress, now called the Heavenly Fortress. On the surface, the opponent seems to be a mob, with no coordination between each other, and Leon also clearly knows the opponent's attack route and has players to support, knows the opponent's ability and various materials and team progress, but the disadvantage is still extremely huge. The simplest, pure population gap is 15 times. The other gaps are even greater. The opponent is 45,000 troops with combat experience and a certain degree of coordination. On Leon's side, in addition to about 200 knights who have been transformed into Holy Tree Knights, there are only more than 400 Norscan raiders and an almost equal number of Norscan civilians who have combat capabilities. The remaining 2,000 people were either the old, weak, women and children of Norska, or the civilians of the Southern Kingdom or the serfs and ordinary slaves who were looted. They were well protected and had not experienced any battles. Their morale and training were not worth counting on, so Leon only put them in the giant tree outpost fortress for training as the last reserve. So on the front battlefield, the population gap was an astonishing 45 times. Even if he had an intelligence advantage and knew the opponent's attack route, he could not gradually erode the opponent's living force without a naval battle. He could only rely on a solid group of fortresses and spells to fight. Before the arrival of the chivalrous expedition, Leon's worst estimate was that most of his city was destroyed, and with only 20% of the current population, he could get about 10,000 people. Because in Leon's calculations, although his own ability was very powerful, most of his strength needed to resist the miracles of the evil gods. The 4 evil gods served him alone. How could this blessing be less? Moreover, the other side also had a hired magician group and a magician entourage. All of this indicates that a difficult war is about to begin. It can even be said that if he had not arranged the traps of the heavenly fortress and Fool's Beach in advance, so that the opponent's 3,000 most powerful professional army was completely in a state of waiting for death. If it was a normal battle, he would have gone up to smash the psychic energy himself. However, when the fight really started, Leon found that it seemed to be completely different. In Leon's conception, the enemy was the god of wisdom who made plans, the god of struggle bravely moved forward, the god of joy maintained morale, and the god of life maintained the front line. But the reality was not the case. The believers of the god of struggle killed the servants of the god of wisdom without hesitation, on the grounds that the other party was confusing the people with evil words and disturbing the morale of the army. According to the information revealed by the players, Joshua, the leader of the god of joy, killed all the military doctors who believed in the god of life before boarding the ship, and then took their mutated bodies and claimed that they were unclean. Forget about working together. 2 of the 4 evil gods' protections disappeared in just a few days. Moreover, after watching the god of struggle kill the mages along the way, he crashed into the heavenly kingdom fortress and was about to be destroyed. Only one of the 4 evil gods was left. What was even more terrifying was that the followers of the god of struggle were still circling around Fool's Beach because of their boring sense of honor. They had not even entered, let alone sent a signal to the overseas fleet. The large fleet that did not receive the signal and information was wandering and confused on the sea for 3 days, without determining the surrounding environment and landing site. The large force could only bite the bullet and take the old route. However, in the process of crossing the strait between Albion Island and the Norska Peninsula, they encountered sea elves who came to seek revenge on Leon. After the initial communication, the troops that were supposed to merge together insisted that the other side was a group of chaos-infected people and beasts, and had a sea battle in the Albion Strait. The war lasted for a day and a night, and the battle was extremely tragic. 4/5 of the player fleet was destroyed, 1/5 of the chivalrous expedition fleet was damaged, and the 3 sea beasts and 14 trainers of the sea elves were killed at an astonishing cost. After the war, they took away some of the sea elves' animal taming tools and corpses, and made the sea elves swear to make Britannia pay the price. At the beginning, Leon even suspected that he was crazy and hallucinating. This was not the most surprising thing for Leon. The most surprising thing was the 3rd fleet. The 3rd wave of players' main fleet and escort fleet encountered the arrival of ferries when they passed through the Claw Sea during the assembly process. The communication between the players and the ferries was quite smooth. At first, everyone was talking and laughing, until a fairy smiled and dissected the player and ate his heart and liver. Only then did the player camp know the beastly nature of the fairies. Through the forum and the signals of the fairy world, both sides immediately began to use their own characteristics to start a battle royale in the Claw Sea. Countless ships of fairies and players ran aground and sank on the edge of the Norska and Empire coasts, or hunted each other in the ice and snow in the damp and cold forests. For the fairies, it is a very interesting thing to play a hunting game with players whose flesh and blood can grow automatically. As for the players, it is impossible not to take revenge after you have been hit in the face. So when Leon was sitting in the observatory waiting for the unprecedented war to come, the expedition fleet had already lost half of its strength in the process. Along with this chivalrous expedition, from Britannia to the Norska Peninsula and then to the Chaos Sea, the entire route was a mess, and only the beach prepared by Leon was empty. The big chaotic grass didn't play with him at all. He had planned to fight positional battles and fortress battles, but he was ready for most of the day, and a large number of people died in the civil war on the opposite side. Don't die. Where can I find manpower if you die? Looking at the dozens of large and small battle sites marked on the map, Leon felt his heart bleeding. Those are all his own manpower, his own. You have fought a civil war like this. How can you get manpower to build cities and civilizations? Forget it. Go to the heavenly fortress, and get as much as you can. It's just chaos pollution. It can still be saved. Looking at the structure on the sand table, Leon sighed, and his figure instantly disappeared from the observatory and arrived at Fool's Beach. Facing the Kittenite who was half kneeling and panting on the beach, Leon instantly found a sense of balance, and a smile appeared on his face. I really beg you to promote it more and read it more. A newcomer like me can only update 2,000 or 4,000 words in the first period of the new book, otherwise I won't get many recommended positions. And now there are more than 1,000 words to read. Sanjiang is very difficult. But there is still some hope. I really beg all readers to help promote it more and read it more. Thank you. Here. Chapter 61, Eliminating Infection. In the conventional sense, chaos infection cannot be removed. Chaos infection is like a strange body deformation, or a natural growth pattern. He is not an ordinary so-called illness, or a so-called brain problem. It is not like that. If it is an illness, then after the deformed lesions on the body are removed, the body will automatically heal. If it is just a simple brain disorder, after treatment and re-education, it can also become a new person. But chaos infection is a fundamental change from the essence of a person. After chaos infection, a person is deformed and has no other appearance. They will think that their state is normal and that this is the posture that humans should have, and the body and consciousness itself will also admit that this state is the most normal and the most perfect. Therefore, chaos pollution is the most difficult pollution to interfere with, because as long as the person's thinking itself changes, as long as the person is no longer a human being, then chaos pollution will faithfully distort the human body into a posture suitable for chaos magic, even turn it into something else that isn't human. But this is a good thing for Leon. Just because ordinary people think it is impossible does not mean that he thinks it is impossible. The Chaos followers in the Chaos Wasteland and the Norska Peninsula are as numerous as the fish in the river. It would be a pity if they could not be used. So he has a very unique method to make these chaos polluters wake up. Although it is just a small idea, Leon feels that he can still manipulate them a little to make these monsters accept his rule. Coward, coward, you actually use such despicable means. You dared to hurt me, the night of redemption. You stand up, duel with me, fight me to the death. On the beach, the Gitanite roared crazily, spewing black smoke and flames from his mouth, looking angrily at the knights and Leon on the opposite side. Are you scared? Coward, you despicable bugs. Trash without a war honor. I will chop you off one by one, cut you up, chop you up. I will spill your blood on the earth. Let your souls be played with by the gods forever. I will tear you into pieces. Go, slap them in the face. Yes, sir. The giant tree knight, who was full of branches and full of vitality, like a mobile fortress, said in a deep voice. It was just like an adult beating a child. Before Gita, who was roaring on the beach, could react, the huge knight looked down at him and punched him in the head with 2 heavy punches. The 2 heavy blows that were enough to make ordinary people explode into blood foam in an instant obviously made the crazy demon sober up a lot. The huge blood god servant looked at the even taller giant tree knight in front of him, who looked like a war colossus with blue eyes. He calmed down and looked at the warriors surrounding him with a resentful expression, but he didn't dare to say anything, which was completely different from his master. Looking at the Gitanite who dared to be angry but not speak, Leon nodded with satisfaction. He knew that this Gitanite was a little timid, otherwise he would not have wandered on this beach for so long. This is a special test product. The other troops that have been contaminated by chaos are now hanging on ropes at the heavenly fortress, being interrogated and tortured. If someone with the vision of the fairy world stood here, he would be surprised to find that the speech is actually very lively. All the troops were tortured by the invisible army. In the illusory fortress of the heavenly fortress, those knights who grew horns on their heads and began to spit fire were screaming in the void. They were still very loyal. When they saw the Gitanite fighting alone on the beach, they shouted in various ways, hoping that their leader would realize that something unusual was happening here. But unfortunately, the buildings in the fairy world have the best sound insulation effect. if nothing else. In order to ensure that their pranks would not be noticed by ordinary people, this group of beastly alien races would never let the so-called hopeful shouts spread out of their fortress and interfere with the judgment of outsiders. Lord Gita, leave quickly. Sent a signal to the main force quickly. Even if I die, I will not let these demons succeed. Hanged inside the illusory heavenly fortress, these demonized soldiers looked at the tall Gita knight on the beach and screamed at the top of their lungs. However, the nothingness soldiers forged from the soul fragments of the fairies obviously inherited the fine traditions of the fairies. They happily piled them on the edge of the beach and then cast a soundproof spell, making these soldiers look at the insulting scene in front of them in despair. Gita knight, I know you. Leon raised his head, looked at the giant in front of him with a face full of resentment, and said with a smile, you were once a warrior of the goddess, fighting bravely on the battlefield for the honor of the goddess of the lake. Or trying to fight bravely. I admire people who fight for their own beliefs, regardless of whether this belief is correct. On the beach, the huge Gita did not say anything, but looked vigilantly at the man in front of him who was wearing a white robe, with eyes like spirals and an unusually kind expression on his face. He could feel that a dangerous signal was emanating from the man in front of him. Gita knight felt that every cell in his body was screaming at him to escape from this man, but he didn't want to. He just glared at the man in front of him stubbornly. Looking at the Gita knight in front of him, Leon smiled, as if he was looking at a child who was making trouble. I am a kind person. I love every human being, including you who are polluted and tainted by chaos. You should have noticed that your current thinking, current posture, and soul are all caused by the interference and pollution of chaos. So, let me untie the hypnosis of chaos for you. This process may be a little painful, but I believe that since you are a human being and you were once a staunch believer of the Lady of the Lake, you will definitely not feel any pain. No, to be precise, the demon part of you will not feel pain either. Looking at the Gita knight whose expression was gradually distorted in front of him, Leon's smile became more gentle and kind, and a faint golden light began to appear on his palm. After all, demons cannot feel pain. What are you going to do? It's time to save you, Gita knight. Leon smiled. We will become partners soon, since chaos pollution starts from the soul. As long as the polluted soul is completely crushed and absorbed, won't the pollution be lifted? The power of complete destruction brought by the Stonehenge flowed in his palm. Leon stretched out his hand and grabbed the Gita knight's huge body, refining it in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the pale golden light flowed through the demonic body. In an instant, the huge monster let out a scream that resounded throughout the entire beach. No, Joshua, save me. Gita? What happened? Joshua, who was resting on the island of Orbian, instinctively raised his head, as if he felt something. But looking at the distant, high-hanging wound of the world, Joshua still shook his head and continued to lie down on his soft bed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Will we meet again? Orbian Island, a temporary position. This island full of swamps and fog is not very suitable as a target for the chivalrous expedition. There are only a group of swamp monsters abandoned by the god of chaos, and they are extremely limited in doing evil. Moreover, a long time ago, the mysterious druid cult once placed some specious matrices on this island, separating the entire island from the site of chaos. Although it is hard to say whether the chaos gods are too lazy to look at these useless things. But in short, this island is not impressive. But the chivalrous expedition fleet had to make temporary repairs on this island. They had to spend time maintaining their ships and then wait for news from the Vanguard fleet. However, this was already the 7th day. The Vanguard fleet did not send any signal as agreed. My respectable Vanguard General, Knight Gita, may have killed his wizard entourage and then fought a decisive battle with the Witch King of the Broken Land. It's normal that no news has been sent. But my lord, if we do this, Wouldn't our expedition be in danger? Wiping the sweat from his cheeks, Edward looked at the naked knight Joshua licking grapes in front of him, and said nervously, "After all, we still need their fighting power. If we rely solely on our abilities to face such a powerful witch king, there may be some problems, especially when we were ambushed by the sea elves." No, Mr. Edward, do you think the joy of victory should be shared with others? Looking at Edward with a nervous face in front of him, Joshua lazily lay on the bed and grinned with a mysterious smile. The pleasure of victory and honor should be enjoyed by yourself. Sharing joy will not make joy greater, but will only change your honor. I hate this kind of behavior. Besides, it is impossible for that wizard to fight against the Gita Knight without paying any price. I know better than anyone how difficult that guy is. If you want to use witchcraft to fight him, you have to be careful. Although the goddess's gaze has been stripped away, it is precisely because of his obsession that other things have been protected. But, as you said, 7 days have passed, and he may have died. Licking his lips with a slender tongue like a snake, Joshua chuckled and reached out to pick Edward's chin. In these few short days, Edward's appearance has also changed dramatically. Originally, Edward was a strong and charismatic man. However, since drinking that glass of wine and spending that wonderful night, Edward felt that his body seemed to have changed. His skin began to become white, and his body seemed to have a faint crystal light brewing, and the whole person became young and beautiful. Yes, beautiful. In just over a week, Edward turned into a beautiful woman with a charming face. Even his body had a curve. He was a little panicked, but everyone told him that it was the blessing of the Lady of the Lake. He had been recognized by the Lady of the Lake and was regarded as a treasure, so he could get such a beautiful and powerful change. Edward believed this without hesitation. After all, the knights he saw did look very elegant. Maybe this was just a process. But in Joshua's eyes, the player in front of him looked more like a lovely jester. His innocent words and sincere eyes every day always made Joshua feel supreme happiness. This is really interesting, much more interesting than imagined. However, when this joy is about to get tired, it is time to get the greatest joy and fun. The madman in the broken land, the wizard king, the monster who stole the territory that should have belonged to the dark gods by some unknown means, his tortured death can make him get the greatest joy. At the same time, he could also make his supreme master extremely happy to win the first prize of this game. This world is just a game, why take it so seriously? I really hope that Gita Knight can live to see the day when we bathe in glory. However, according to his vitality, I think this is very likely. After all, the Witch King is a madman, and he claims to love everyone, so let's see if he can rescue Gita Knight. Stretching lazily, the purple-haired and purple-eyed knight Joshua walked towards the exquisite and luxurious fleet, and snapped his fingers with his back to the camp full of men and women entangled and emitting a lewd atmosphere. All troops assemble, knights. We are now ready to go to the broken land. It's time for the gods to witness our piety. And almost at the same time, in the basement of the ancient saint ruins where no one would find him, Leon looked at the tall figure in front of him, and a look of joy gradually appeared on his face. It looks good. The effect is very good. Hey, in this case, you can just take care of the shallows and the landing place. This is what I call my sharp blade. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. I can't wait to see what the people of the chivalrous expedition will say when they see you. Gita, 3/4 of the progress of the path analysis according to your current scientific research progress and magic control. After you obtain the last path, you will unlock dangerous technology, emotional materialization. Please note that this technology is dangerous technology and may lead to unpredictable consequences. You have obtained the special combat unit, the Pale Army. Strings of characters began to appear in Leon's consciousness, and countless ancient and strange knowledge flowed in his brain. But he finally did it, this impossible miracle, although the price was unimaginable. Looking at the huge figure floating in the glass frame in front of him, Leon slowly closed his eyes. From the moment the creatures of this world left the ruins, they became travelers. They placed their slim hopes on the future and set foot on the directions guided by 4 paths. Now, 3 of them are manifesting in your body, and there is only 1 fragment left to complete the path. Next, hunt down your fragments, capture the incomplete parts, and bring my people back. Let the people of this world see this original choice, my warriors, my minions, my Gitanites. Ha 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 ha. I really look forward to the moment when you meet each other. The huge individual in the glass frame seemed to be shaken by the laughter and slowly opened his eyes. A golden light shone in his pupils, as if it was the fire of destruction that had been burning since the beginning of the world. Chapter 63. My people, my love. This is very wrong, but I don't know what's wrong. Standing on the beach and looking up at the wound of the world that seemed to be flooded by the sky, Edward only felt that his brain was a little muddled. Just like drinking a strong wine, Edward always felt that his life during this period was like falling into a fog. In a trance, it seemed that everything had passed, and it seemed that nothing had passed. At the beginning, the players defined this chivalrous expedition as just a side job. To put it bluntly, it was to strengthen the momentum and let the Bretonians realize that the players were with them, in order to lay a reputation foundation for the Hope City near Norska and Kislev. At least let the Bretonians recognize the existence of the Hope City. For the players, it is not difficult to put together such a chivalrous expedition fleet in the Old World. It can even be said that the existence of this fleet, and even its loss, is necessary. Building ships without magic protection is not a problem even for players, but players have to prove that they have the ability and determination to do things. After all, the main fleets were in the third expedition fleet that set out from the port of Kislev. They said they were going to conquer the Broken Land, but in fact, they were going to explore the landmarks and resources of the Norska Peninsula and make plans for the future of the players. You can't say that you are having a good time in the front, and then you steal other people's things in the back without paying anything. This is a deal, a signal. The real goal of the players has never been to be a dog for a certain force, but to find their own home through the cracks. This is why they value the geographical location information of Norska given by Leon. As for the chivalrous expedition, whether it is victory or failure, it doesn't mean much to the players. If it succeeds, it is naturally a good thing. If it fails, you must show heroic fighting, at least earn some impression points. But now, Edward looked at the dock that was being built in front of him, as well as the verdant mountains and the flat plain pass, and always had an inexplicable feeling. He seemed to have done something wrong, but he didn't know what he had done wrong. Just with this feeling, a kind of confusion continued to spread in his heart, and at this moment, an intimate voice dispelled the confusion that was constantly extending in his heart. "What's wrong, my dear Edward? Are you shocked by the wound of the world?" "No, I just feel that something is not right." "Of course, we have already knocked on the door, but the owner here has not responded. This is certainly not right. This is not the character of that monster." A white arm was placed on Edward's shoulder, and a handsome face came from behind. Joshua's dazzling face looked at Edward with some pity, and then looked forward. Although he was asking Edward, in fact, his purple eyes never looked at Edward, who had grown into a red-haired beauty. He just nervously scanned the beach in front of him where people had begun to disembark and set up camps and defense circles. Joshua was just contaminated, not amnesia. He still remembered the terrifying wizard standing there. The crazy spiral eyes, the ability to drill into the mind and make people understand the words, and the crazy theory of love and the ease when he sent himself back. Joshua remembered them all. But now, he came back with a whole fleet. The wizard's followers began to set up warning traps around the camp. Even the entangled men and women briefly gave up the stimulation of their senses, trying to curb their desires for the game of the supreme god, checking the camp and using the secret method to distort the area. But where is the Wizard King now? Did he run away in fear? Joshua looked at everything in front of him with purple eyes, and his face was suspicious. But the next moment, his vision suddenly became blurred. "No, I have been here for a while. It's just that you have been ignoring me." A voice suddenly sounded in Joshua's mind. It was as if it was instinct, and it seemed that the benevolent Prince of Joy had once again given him new power. His eyes seemed to penetrate some special spatial structure and saw the location of the wizard. It was right in front of all the expeditionary forces. He had not changed at all. Wearing a white robe, he stood in the center of the pass with a kind and benevolent face. There was no one around him, only he stood there alone. But just looking at the man standing there, Joshua's brain began to sound the alarm frantically. It seemed that being seen was some kind of spell, some kind of infection. The moment Joshua saw it, everyone seemed to have broken through the barrier, and removed the cognitive defects in their minds. They looked at the man who was sitting in the middle of the pass, as if floating in the air, and exclaimed, "Who is that?" Is it that blasphemous wizard? When did he stay there? Why didn't we see anything? Exclamations came from all camps, and then these warriors who had experienced the sea elf battle and developed preliminary coordination and training characteristics took up their weapons and set up shield walls. On the ocean, the archers, crossbows and artillery blessed or cursed by various holy spirits or monsters also turned around and aimed at the white-robed wizard who looked thin and powerless and seemed to be harmless. A warning was issued in the minds of each of them. Don't look into his eyes. Don't think about his words. Only by being hostile correctly can you survive. This is what the voice in their heads told them. Well, my future people, good morning. I am your lord, Leon. A gentle voice that everyone could understand appeared in their heads. The terrifying sense of oppression even gave people some kind of substantial illusion, causing some people with weak wills to kneel down instinctively. Although you lackeys are constantly fighting each other, I cannot let my guard down. After all, I have my country. My knights are fighting in the Chaos Wasteland, and my people are also fearlessly protecting their homes. My fortress stands at the border, intercepting all demons. So I'm the only one here. Of course, I'm here to persuade you to surrender, because I really love each and every one of you, and I cherish every person in this world. If possible, I hope no one will die. If you can accept it, please tell me in your heart. I can feel everything about you. Well, did the initial negotiations break down? It's not that surprising, but look at this. You can consider it. I'm not lying. I will save you from suffering. Looking at the silence, with only the swords and guns aimed at his beachhead, Leon seemed helpless, sighed indulgently, and stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. Come out, my servant, my minions. Come and see the ugly postures of your former comrades. The voice full of pity and love echoed in the celestial bodies, and infinite light emerged on the earth. Once again, the feeling of something breaking flickered and jumped in front of everyone, and the invisible barrier between cognition and the world broke in front of everyone, letting the contents slowly fall to the ground. The huge, several-meter-high behemoth was pale all over, and where there used to be scales and bat wings, there were streaks of white-gray like ash. But this strange monster is still alive. Under the gentle sea breeze, this curled giant slowly spread its limbs and raised its head. The pale thing that was once a knight slowly stretched out its rugged and deformed palm, and said hoarsely to the physician, "Joshua, save ... save ... me." Looking at the familiar face, an uncontrollable and great fear almost instantly swept the entire chivalrous expedition fleet. Chapter 64. Dyeing the pale army with blood. What is that? Looking at the slowly moving figure that looked like a gray statue, Joshua felt his scalp tingle even though he had turned into a demon. A deep fear made his body tremble. It was a feeling of disgust and terror from the depths of his soul after seeing something that shouldn't exist, a creation that violated the logic of reality. Is it an undead? No, that's not right. Still alive. Looking at the heart that was still beating and the eyes that turned into a golden Gita, Joshua's mind flashed an almost impossible answer, or an answer that only appeared in theory. That was a part of the knowledge that the dark gods had given him since he believed in the Prince of Pleasure. However, even if Joshua could now tear off his disguise and show his true demon body to the world, he didn't dare to believe that the legend in the chaos was actually true. You bastard ... What on earth have you done? How rude. Demons. The man sitting in the void propped up his chin, looked at Joshua who was gritting his teeth in anger, and chuckled and said, I have reversed the miracle of chaos pollution and saved mankind from inhuman existence. I have accomplished an unprecedented great thing. How about a little you damn bastard? You call this reversing chaos pollution? Looking at the blood god believer whom he hated standing there dully, like a statue, Joshua opened his mouth and roared angrily and fearfully, What did you do to his soul? Do you understand what you have created? The source of the fear that penetrated into the bone marrow was very clear. It was the soulless, a monster that should not have appeared, and it was impossible for it to appear in reality. It was alive without a soul, and it had lost its life but could still speak and act, as if the common sense of all things had dissipated. Even the dark gods would be shocked by this cruelty. There was nothing left in the huge monster. Only a layer of golden fire of destruction was burning. But why would the soulless have traces of the blood god's power? Exclamation mark. Ha ha ha. Of course it's because I've embarked on the path, and will lead you to a more gentle era. Looking at the shocked demon in front of him, the last bit of magic power in the empty path in Leon's eyes was also filled. The second stage of the war path is completed. You have experienced the true meaning of part of the warpath. You can already mobilize the power represented by the warpath to do some miracles within the scope of power. The third stage of the warpath, the number of lives to be sacrificed, 1,000,000 when hunting demons and fairies. Naturally, a certain red path has been on the right track. Leon, who has used magic and psychic energy to start parsing and get results, can even do things like this now. The greatest pleasure in this world is power, and the second pleasure is the solution to the puzzle. And now, Leon has the keys to these two greatest pleasures in his own hands. He has never been a slave to civilization, but the creator of civilization. How could he have any reason not to love everyone? And how could he have any reason to treat everything with his own personal physical desires? Now he is one and all. Nothing can make him happier than what he is going to do now. It is time to save them, purify the soul and eliminate chaos. This is my mercy to you. I have no other choice, although I can save most of the less polluted beings. For those who are too deeply polluted, I can only reshape their state. Forgive me. This is also necessary. Looking at those poor people whose souls were already riddled with holes, Leon sighed, stretched out his finger with a compassionate face, and pointed to the huge world wound in the sky. The magic of chaos began to gather at the fingertips, and reality and virtuality began to blur. The next moment, the chant that everyone could understand began to whisper in everyone's mind. From the moment the creatures of this world left the ruins, they became travelers, facing this strange world. They placed their slim hopes on the future and set foot on the directions indicated by the four paths. Yes, there is a path that indicates this. As if drawing a card, the unimaginable power on the fingertips was gathering, and finally turned into a dark red light that shot into the world wound in the sky. Something is coming. Whether it is the players or the recruited militia, they all looked up at the crack that gradually turned into blood. The path of plunder shows that people forget their essence for the pleasure of struggle, and the result of thirsting for blood and killing each other. Blood, red, struggle. Only those who transcend courage and morality, abandon fear and sorrow, can stand on the final battlefield, become the only master of war. This is the path of war. The finger tapped slightly. Crack. It was like the sound of something shattering was transmitted from the world itself. The sky was shattered in an instant, and the red light instantly emerged from the gap in the world wound, covering the entire sky. Everything was shrouded in a dreadful crimson, and one could feel a breath of iron surging from one's throat. What was even more terrifying was that what followed was not salvation, but more and more visual and perceptual confusion. One after another, pale things seemed to be inspired, falling from the void and slowly opening on the ground. Incomplete long horns, broken scales, dull and pale faces. One after another, faces that seemed familiar appeared on the ground, slowly unfolding their ash-like bodies, and looking at the position with golden eyes. What the hell is this? Don't panic. Don't panic. Build a defensive position. Build a defensive position. Brother. It's just a group of soulless people. Watch me push them back. There was a commotion on the position, and even many demons did not pretend to show their hideous and terrifying bodies, roaring and regrouping the defensive position, facing the pale monster that was so strong that it could not be surpassed. Even the demons looked so amiable. Under the shining blood-red light of war, these players, militiamen, and even demons even transcended the barriers between each other and began to build a defense line like crazy. But, is this meaningful? Even I think this scene may be a bit too much. Amid the screams of countless people and the red light, Liang looked at the demons in front of him and smiled and sat in the air, stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. But there is no way. My fortress and people are fighting against the demons that your master used to attack the barrier, so I am also sorry to leave you with a bad impression. Don't blame me. It hurts me to let you get hurt. I said, I love everyone, because the sooner you surrender to me, the more you can feel the source of my strength and faith. I am you, and you are me. It's just like this. So, Pale Army, let them repent. Apostrophe. There was no sound, but the hundreds of Pale Army stretched out their dry palms. The spine bulged, the body collapsed, and countless pale things slowly stood up under the red light. The dark red symbols flowed with the pulse and the blood vessels of the limbs. In the madness, they flickered on the surface of the body like blood, supporting their bodies that looked like ash. Their expressions were frozen in numbness and calmness, but only the pale golden eyes and the strong sense of destruction supported the motivation of these monsters to move forward. Chaos. A hoarse voice emerged from the throat, carrying a desire for destruction. The horrible bodies that lost their souls each dragged out some broken blood-colored weapons from the red light of nothingness. Then, slowly, but like thunder, they drove the war horse that appeared under their crotch at some point, which was covered with ashes, and began to charge at the chaotic position filled with the screams of fear of players and militia. Destroy, kill. Chapter 65. The game has just begun. This is too terrible. Standing on the top of the giant tree outpost, looking at the almost endless demons outside, the giant tree knights held their weapons and deeply felt Leon's foresight. Yes, it is meaningless to talk about morality and spirit with demons. These monsters will not understand and empathize. They are not human at all. And the chaos believers who have been transformed have also lost their qualifications as humans. The greatest contribution they can make is death. After Leon judged that the chaos pollution could not be cured in the middle and late stages, and realized the problem of the road, he ordered most of the troops to be transferred to the giant tree outpost, and issued a death order that the giant tree outpost must not fall no matter what. At the beginning, people did not understand why Leon made such a judgment, and put himself and the landing place almost naked in front of the more than 20,000 chivalrous expeditionary forces. But now, everyone realizes that Leon's judgment is correct. After the chivalrous expeditionary force landed on the beach, the giant tree outpost and the Heavenly Kingdom fortress were in emergency. As the two major bridgeheads guarding the Stonehenge, countless demons emerged from all directions like waves at almost the same time, and they were trying to break through the two nodes that maintained the Stonehenge defense matrix. The Stonehenge itself has Leon who can mobilize the magic elements to suppress it, but this will involve a lot of Leon's energy. If you fight head-on on the beach, you are likely to be attacked by demons in the rear. So Leon made a bold judgment and moved all the mobile troops to the rear, leaving him alone to fight against the chivalrous expeditionary army. This is a very crazy act, although it does ensure that Leon's energy will be focused on the battle as much as possible, no matter what. It is an army of more than 20,000 people. Can one person with a bunch of puppets win? Everyone present regretted why they were slacking off in the first place. The demons were not all teleported out of thin air. Most of them gathered inside the Chaos Wasteland and then arrived here. If the giant tree guards could follow their beliefs at the beginning and continue to hunt demons, I am afraid the situation would not be so critical. Now, just maintaining the defense of the giant tree outpost has made the living people present feel a little tired. They really have no power to support the front-line battlefield on Liang's side. I just hope there won't be any danger over there, sir. Looking at the demons that rushed into the life barrier of the giant tree outpost like waves, and then were killed one by the giant tree guards who blocked the door, the Norseman said with some concern, "We have demons everywhere here and the heavenly fortress, only the God-given plane is protected by us because of the environmental advantage. There is also a group of people who are responsible for serving as a reserve team in the land of descendants to look after those who were rescued from the chaos. Even if Lord Leon is a true god, he can't do such a thing, right? It's still too cruel for him and some of the things he created to resist the Bretonian expedition. Don't think about these problems. If Lord Leon thinks there is no problem, Then there is no problem. The Norseman on the side looked at the tragic scene outside and responded nonchalantly, "The news from the heavenly fortress is good. Those spirit armies have been killing demons in the fortress, and the magic reserves are also abundant. Lord Leon thinks this is good, so just believe it." But that's 20,000 people, not 20,000 pigs. Even if Lord Leon has the ability to see through the sky and the earth, he also said that there is a high possibility of being attacked by the dark gods, right? In that case, there is still a possibility of problems. Should we take a team back to support? The battlefield on our side is also very serious, but I believe that if it is Lord Leon, no matter what, it is impossible to let the enemy enter the landing place. The Norseman looked at his companion and said firmly, with technology and supreme wisdom, the words and behaviors of these Norsemen began to become more polite, and even began to think and review their original behavior. But the more wisdom they have, the more they feel that they are sinful. If everything had been carried out according to Leon's plan, I am afraid there would be no problems from beginning to end. But the more ideas you have, the more mistakes you will make. Now the demons in front of you are like waves. What should you do to break out of the encirclement of the demons and help your king while the giant tree outpost does not fall? The knights did not think, but just killed the enemy calmly, looking at the countless demon army in front of them. The Norsemen could only calmly gather around the Holy Grail, thinking while throwing their firepower at the demon army. One person went against tens of thousands of troops, just for a better future. How tragic is this? But at the same time, the situation on the front battlefield was not as tragic as the people at the giant tree outpost thought. Or rather, it was the opposite. "Mom, put me back on the boat. Put me back. I don't want to die here. I don't want to be a monster without a soul. Save me." It collapsed at the touch of a button. The carefully arranged defense line was simply useless to the pale army. More than 200 pale beasts were like more than 200 meteorites falling into the lake, instantly lifting up the front row of shield walls, and in the blink of an eye, smashing the soldiers and players in front of them into minced meat. These soulless monsters holding blood-red long swords can cause instinctive fear to all soulful lives. Most people can't even muster the courage to fight. They can only cry for their parents, scream and turn around to run back to the ship, breaking the entire defense line into pieces. Don't be nervous. Don't panic. Do as you were trained. There are only 200 people on the other side. Don't panic. Although the position was broken by the impact, the battle-hardened knight Joshua immediately recovered from the state of shock and realized the flaw of the pale army almost instantly. It was the number of people. Their number was too small. More than 200 pale army soldiers. They moved slowly, opened and closed, and crashed into the line like war machines. It seemed as if destruction itself had come. But in fact, most of the deaths were not caused by the pale army. Instead, it was their chaotic front line and the internal slaughter caused by extreme fear that really brought death. However, just as Joshua was shouting with his voice full of temptation and glory, trying to reorganize the front, the largest monster in the crowd suddenly raised its head and roared. Joshua, the monster roared like crazy, and its golden pupils reflected Joshua's muscular body. It roared and grabbed its weapon, suddenly jumped up, and smashed down on Joshua. There was no escape. Although it felt like a long time, the blood-red light in the sky nailed him to the spot like a cage. The supernatural means made Joshua stare in amazement as the huge body crossed a distance of dozens of meters and instantly smashed in front of him, and then raised the scarlet beheading sword in his hand high. The four looked at each other, looking at the dim yellow eyes that seemed to destroy itself. Joshua even felt that his perception had stagnated. He was locked in place by some power, some angry ritual. It seemed that in the void, there was a satisfied howl from a huge, bloodthirsty individual. "I'm going to die," Joshua thought, with the blood-red path of the beheading sword reflected in his eyes. "You deserve to die." Gita roared, and the blood-red blade whizzed past. But just when Joshua was desperate, in the void, he suddenly heard another existence he served, laughing on the battlefield. Hee hee. In an instant, the red light in the sky twisted for a moment. The unimaginable pressure almost dissipated in the blink of an eye. Joshua felt that at that moment, his body seemed to have shed a layer of shell, and instantly became flexible and full of vitality. resisting the fatal blow of the Gata beast. No, to be precise, he took off his own shell. I survived? What on earth did he become? Looking down at his slender arms and the snake-like lower body with scales and flesh, Joshua subconsciously looked back to the position just now. The body that was stuck in place and smashed into a pulp by Gata was unexpectedly dry and broken, as if the contents nurtured in this human body finally broke free. The last snake tail was swinging, and even if it was cut into the ground by Gata's sword, it only splashed countless sparks. He even felt that if he exerted force, it would not be a problem to even overturn the giant beast. Isn't this a handsome man? Joshua, looking at the former knight who was now a demon standing there, Leon smiled. You have finally become someone I can be ruthless to, demon. Our game has just begun. Confirmed to be on Sanjian! Thank you for your support, readers. There will be a burst of updates when it is on the shelves. Thank you all. Chapter 66 I'm really not good at fighting. Your pale army has launched a terrifying charge under your personal command. Your pale army's characteristic, all things are horrified, has taken effect. All things are horrified, the exclusive characteristic of the pale army of the soulless. Any creature with a soul will fall into great fear and terror after seeing the soulless. Even if the opponent has the effect of resisting fear, it cannot avoid being horrified. Only creatures such as demons and elemental life can reduce the level of terror. The enemy's front has been defeated. 14 infantry regiments, 7 cavalry regiments, and 1 construction site civil engineering regiment have collapsed and disintegrated. You are on the road to victory. The enemy commander Joshua has been noticed by the gods, and the beheading failed. The demon Joshua has activated his charisma. The enemy's front is being reorganized. Alas, I am really not suitable for fighting. There are too many things to consider. Floating in the observatory, Leon felt everything that happened in his territory and sighed with some regret. The phantom he created was fighting the enemy outside. After all, he was a real core figure, and it would be best if he could watch from a safe place. He needed to show his people when he came to the battlefield head-on, but if he couldn't distinguish the real needs from his own value, that would be the rhythm of trouble. So Leon rationally returned to his observatory and began to control the entire battle situation from the perspective of the overall civilization. Let his avatar make an arrogant gesture outside, and maximize the magic wind and spell structure. But just like what happened just now, although Leon resisted the demonic invasion of the God of Wisdom in the Heavenly Fortress, and also resisted the attack of the God of War and the God of Life at the Giant Tree Outpost, by the way, the God of Life didn't feel like he was hitting anything. Instead, he kept charging the giant tree, making the life barrier expand another circle, making the blood god helpless and furious. But he didn't find the last god of joy. Because they didn't kill enough demons and didn't have time to take countermeasures, the huge emotional entity finally transformed their strongest commander into a demon shaped like a giant snake. I failed to kill the general. Looking at the demon that was born from the body and struggled to roar at the sky, Leon raised his eyebrows. I really don't know how to fight. Just like the summary and judgment of myself at the beginning, if Ulfric came, he might have killed the demons directly and persuaded the enemy to surrender, right? But compared with the current chivalrous expedition, the long-term Norse-Can migration is more important in the long run. As long as the overall mystery and calm attitude are guaranteed, people will spontaneously think that this force is worth relying on. After all, even at the critical moment, a figure of Ulfric's level did not return to the place of descent. This confidence and performance is the best billboard for the Norse-Cans. They have always admired and followed the strong, so they will spontaneously follow Ulfric and move in large numbers after the chivalrous expedition. But in the end, it was because his strategy was not good enough. If his strategy was really good enough, with 200 special units that could demoralize the opponent, it would be a miracle if he didn't drive the opponent into the sea. It's not like now, where he has to reveal his cards bit by bit. Keep struggling, demon. See how many cards you can draw. Looking at the second and third colors on standby in the void, and the last lavender logo that was constantly gathering due to the death and injury of demons on the battlefield, Leon floated in the observatory, looking at everything on the territory calmly. He saw the demon let out a piercing scream and instantly overturned his pale army behemoth to the ground. He saw that the monster suppressed the fear in people's hearts with unimaginable language and orders. Perhaps because ordinary humans had no way to fight against the fear from the soul, demons broke free from their human bodies one by one and began to form a line of defense on the battlefield, making the pale army lose their combat capability one after another. To be honest, this is quite simple. Because the difference in numbers is too big, a group of demons can suppress their fear and hold the pale army in place. After the commotion, the slippery demon seemed to be sure of his victory, and looked at the direction of Leon's phantom with a grin. "Now it's only us, wizard." Well done. Unexpectedly brilliant, demon. Congratulations on your unity and working together to defeat the enemies of the first path. So, you lunatic can still laugh now? Next, we will cut you into pieces and still not be able to relieve the hatred in my heart. The demon waved 7 or 8 gorgeous weapons, and a ferocious look appeared on his face. Leon's phantom stood opposite everyone, but showed a mysterious smile. Why not laugh, although you have solved the first path of the pale army? Then, what are you going to do about the second path? The second path? What second path? Does he have a second power of the dark gods? Many demons who suppressed the struggling pale army were stunned when they heard this voice from the bottom of their hearts. That's right. Although I don't know much about how to fight, I still have some experience with psychic power and preparation plans. 200 people fighting against 20,000 people. It won't work if we don't do more preparation. Liang smiled and stretched out his finger, and drew a line in the air. The sound like glass breaking appeared in the minds of all living things in the entire broken land, making everyone feel a sense of terror of the end of the world. The terrifying red light in the sky gradually dissipated, and a twisted green light began to spread from the wound of the world, and the voice that seemed like a curse and could be automatically understood in everyone's mind was born again from the soul, and the chanting that should not have appeared was once again transmitted to everyone's mind. From the moment the creatures of this world left the ruins, they became travelers. Facing this strange world, they placed their slim hopes on the future and embarked on the direction guided by the 4 paths. Yes, there is a path that indicates this. It was expanding. Under the light of the light green twisted light, the pale beasts under the demon began to swell abnormally, like a bloated and deformed monster. An unpleasant stench began to vent and linger around. Dark green muscles and rotten branches spread from the body, bursting out of the terrifying plants full of vitality, and Leon's voice still echoed in the air. That deformed path shows that people distort themselves for their own continuation, and desire the result of entanglement with each other in a cycle. Plants, miserable green, combined. Only those who desire love and nature, abandon ethics and dignity, can find the way of life, become the continuation of rotten living things. This is the way of life. Seeing that the knife cut on the swollen skin of the pale army, but the weapon was stuck by the rapidly regenerating flesh and blood, the snake-like Joshua looked at the smiling projection in anger. This is the power of the god of life. How far do you want to humiliate us? Everything, Leon replied calmly. All of this. Devil Joshua, no matter what. Everything in the world should be under my control. You are also the people I pity and love. This is not humiliation, but the truth. It is my gentle love. However, since you want to fight, I have to show the anger of a loving father. Gita, stand up. Yes, master. The pale monster kneeling on the ground responded. They stood up and shook off the demons who kept screaming and trying to be fixed in place by the weapons like shaking off water. In the turbid yellow eyes full of desire for destruction, there was no concept of normal life. Being seriously injured or dead, their swollen bodies exuded a vicious vitality, causing the surrounding demons to scream in fear. Well, it's round 2, Night Joshua. In the dirty green light, Leon's figure flashed and intertwined. Looking at the desperate expeditionary forces on the plain, he smiled kindly and said, "Let's continue. You haven't fully unleashed your potential yet. You have only been blessed for a short time, right? Let me see what the demons you have transformed into can provide." Haha, Don't just give up everything. Chapter 67 The End of Chivalry. Leon made a lot of preparations for this war. These include but are not limited to the exhaustion bomb made of vitality buried under the Oak of Ages, which uses the Oak of Ages as a sacrifice to destroy all enemies around equally. There is also a series of unpredictable reactions after the token of the Vientiane Labyrinth is shattered. As a wonder made of the token of the God of Wisdom, even after being torn apart in the material world, it may bring unimaginable and unpredictable unknown consequences. Even in the worst case, Leon's idea is to blow up the Stonehenge directly, use the energy torrent of that moment to tear the continental shelf, destroy everything, and wipe out all the chivalrous expeditionary forces and demons in the chaotic wasteland on the ocean and land, and start over. The explosion is likely to destroy the entire broken land and set off a large-scale tsunami in the entire old world, but Leon doesn't care, because for Leon, he just wants to move to the snowy mountains of Norska to rebuild his own country. Although losing a planetary wonder that can be developed into revived planetary wonder is certainly a bit reluctant, Leon has this plan for the continuation. The worst option is to completely abandon these territories and matrices, and manipulate the wind of magic to jump directly into other large areas. No more playing in the old world. As a wizard with powerful magic, he has this ability. After making countless plans and hiding dozens of trump cards and things that can overturn the table, Leon can plan the war in front of him with peace of mind. Fortunately, the difficulty of the chivalrous expedition is really not very high. In addition to being killed by half of the friendly forces, there are many things that are beyond Leon's expectations. The expected attack from the 4 virtual entities did not come at all. They just sent some random demons and troops to interfere with the operation of other towns and fortresses, and basically did nothing. Among them, the God of Life was directly an insider, frantically stuffing vitality into the giant tree outpost, blocking the troops of the God of War outside the door, and they couldn't get in. The demons of the God of Wisdom also performed outside the heavenly fortress, and did not really launch a large-scale attack. Only the God of Joy took a look at the front battlefield, promoted Joshua, and then there was nothing else. They didn't care about anything, just watched from the side, and didn't even oppress the Stonehenge. So they were happy to see Leon borrow and simulate the path. Maybe it was just like what they said at the beginning. This is a great game, and the most important thing about the game is to have fun. Obviously, the fun that Leon can provide is much more interesting than Joshua. The result of this is that Joshua, as a demon of the God of Joy, can't even put up too much resistance. Although the chivalrous expedition army has been corrupted for many days, most of them are ordinary humans and will not fight side by side with the demons. Not killing them is already very restrained. As a novice mission, even if the number of these demons and attackers has increased 9-fold, they have completely lost their resistance under the ability of the third path of the Pale Army, that is, the Wisdom Path, the fighting ability of the War Path, the immortality of the Life Path, and the teleportation of the Wisdom Path. They have been completely defeated. When the humans and players retreated in a sneaky rout, the demons rushed forward one after another, constantly transforming from the chaos believers and rushing into the battlefield like adding fuel. Then they died, were absorbed by the wound of the world, and transformed into magic power to be poured into the Pale Army. Finally, the Gitanite crushed Joshua's slippery lower body with one foot, looked at the demon leader who was bleeding all over, let out a threatening roar, and turned to look at Leon. It seems that your gods don't like you very much. Facing Joshua, whose facial features were oozing blood, 6 arms and snake-like lower body were torn apart, and he was just gasping for breath, Leon shook his head with some regret. The azure light of wisdom changed unpredictably in the sky, and the pale monsters were no longer as pale as ash. Red runes, light green blood vessels, and azure flames appeared on them. These soulless people looked at the last demon with dim eyes and indifference. All the demons left no entity after death. They were all absorbed by the stone circle. Only the empty shells of their bodies that broke free were still floating like sails, proving that these monsters were bred from human bodies. You tried very hard, but in the end, your limit is only here. Liang ignored the horrified eyes of other living humans and players, snapped his fingers lightly, and instantly appeared beside Joshua. Looking at the hideous appearance of the purple demon, he had a look of pity on his face. There is no way to transform those projected souls, and there is no way to get more people to join your ranks, and this is the result. You can never fight against people's pursuit of a better life. Although everyone hates me, a wizard of unknown origin, they are more afraid of you demons. Perhaps the path of pleasure and your feast make you feel that humans and players will always stand on your side, but even the soulless know that your deformed souls are uglier. And your tactics also have big problems. You actually want to add fuel to the tactics and consume us. Under the azure light, Leon, whose eyes were like whirlpools, looked at the demon at his feet who was spitting blood and had begun to spasm, and said softly, "You want to use the troops to transform into undead demons, and then use the demons' physical advantages to delay the Pale army until all their transformations are exhausted. It's a good strategy. And as an apostle of the god of pleasure, you can also feel that there is no path of pleasure among them and myself. But you got one thing wrong, Joshua. I really didn't have the path of pleasure just now, and I really don't understand the power of pleasure. But after so many demons died, it would be rude not to understand. Even if you can delay the path of wisdom and kill them all, I still have the power brought by your path of pleasure. They will be faster, more elegant, and more agile. After all, every demon who died in the Stonehenge is my food. And now, your death has helped me complete the last step. You have killed enough demons. All the demon fragments have been dismantled and sacrificed. Apostrophe you have unlocked the path of pleasure. Apostrophe the lavender light was gestating in the sky. The demon who used to be Joshua's eyeballs trembled, and looked at the magnificent sky at a loss. As a demon of the path of pleasure, he could feel what the purple light represented. It was supreme joy, the most orthodox path, and the destination he wanted to reach in his dreams. Hey! He dug out the last sigh from his lungs. He stared at the wound of the world filled with noble purple, and at the ugly and terrifying soulless bodies and limbs that began to glow purple. His eyes seemed to be questioning, and also seemed to be angry. This clown, no, or a performer under the god of joy, finally expressed his emotions at the end of the stage. He was unwilling to die, and was angry why the god of joy was so tolerant of his enemies. He didn't understand what was going on, but no matter what, he had no reason to live. Just think of it as a nightmare. Night Joshua. When you wake up, you will find that you are living in the most perfect ideal. The demon said nothing, but continued to stare at his eyes, looking at the purple of the sky, and finally spurted out a stream of blood, slowly losing vitality. Leon gently brushed the eyes of the demon who used to be Night Joshua and asked him to close his eyes. The huge demon entity gradually became luminous, turning into pieces of fragmented fragments and rainbow light. The lavender light, like other demon entities, rose into the wound in the sky like a wisp of green smoke. Under the panicked gazes of everyone and the players, Leon slowly stood up and looked at the defeated soldiers. Now, it's time to talk about our problems. Looking at these people, Leon's smile was sincere and genuine. I am really a kind person. Won't you consider my suggestion? Chapter 68 The dust settles. To be honest, at the beginning, players generally believed that the chivalrous expedition in the Broken Land was an armed parade. Whether it was the judgment of the high-level players or the data collection of the middle and low-level players, they all thought so, because the entire Britannia, including all the civilized worlds that players have come into contact with, all the recorded data and related records have proved that chaos and demons are vulnerable to the civilized world. Hundreds of years, even thousands of years of detailed records, all the relics of the civilized world and heroic deeds, detailed records and the poor living conditions of the Norskans. These are all unbroken and continuous records. Not only are they reliable history, but sometimes the parties involved may even be heroic spirits or still alive. What is chaos to them? It is some rural ghost story circulated among some fools and farmers, and it is the helpless result of the choices of some people who cannot survive in the bitter cold land of the north. They are not qualified to obtain deeper information, let alone the elves' forever gathering island, which is always shrouded in fog, and the rainforest in the south, as well as those libraries and historical legends that have never been opened to players. What kind of shocking news is contained in them? They knew nothing. So from the player's point of view, the expedition to the Chaos Wasteland was no different from an armed parade. It was just an activity to get money, people, and then show your face. After making preparations, the main fleet wandered along the coast of Norska to pave the way for the City of Hope and the conquest of the Norska Peninsula. Players were full of hope and dreams for the old world and the advent of the other world. Until today, watching the color gradually return to the aurora borealis and the huge world wound drift in the sky, they realized for the first time that this world was not what the players imagined, but just a different world with certain magical abilities. The myths and strange stories here are likely to be true, because right in front of them, the man in a white robe with a warm face, his eyes were engraved with the ritual and curse of how to tear the whole world into a huge rift. "I'm really sorry that you saw a bit of a rude side," the great wizard called Leon, at least that's what the players heard and translated, looked at the remaining people who were still frightened and smiled widely. "But please rest assured, I will only do this to my enemies. I have infinite affection and love for every human being. As long as you follow my ideas and live better, that is the best thing for me. I don't want to be enemies with you. On the contrary, I hope you can trust me. I am not a cruel person. Rather, you should have heard of what chaos pollution is and know what it is like to be polluted. My approach is the greatest tolerance and kindness. Even if you want to leave, I will never stop you, but I believe you will miss the greatest cause in your life. That is the same as what I just did, the cause of fighting chaos." Looking at the many peasant conscripts and players who were in a mess and even dared not to return to the ship, the white wizard had a smile on his face and opened his hands, as if to embrace these losers. The pale army with runes on their bodies was no longer crazy, and walked silently in the burning camp. Those soulless monsters walked steadily, killing the remaining demons one by one, and then dragged the living humans out of the ruins. The green light began to heal the wounded. The remaining knights, serfs, and players watched everything in front of them in silence. They watched these monsters that killed all the demons, like a group of well-trained doctors, start to save people. Everyone began to gradually doubt whether there was something wrong with their cognition. Obviously, the man floating in the air, who looked kind, was an out-and-out mad wizard, a madman who was so powerful that he could even change the direction of the magic wind in the whole world and wrestle with the gods. "You must think that I will sacrifice your lives and do something evil, but please rest assured that I really love every human being. I will not force you to make a cruel choice, but because of the injuries and the war, I hope you can come to my city and settle down." The floating wizard was in the camp, looking at the frightened knights and serfs, with a sincere smile on his face. This statement immediately made everyone's heart skip a beat. However, only the knights were a little uneasy, and the serfs and free people had already admitted their failure. They just came here hoping to get a chance to rise in class, and if they failed this time, they would just admit defeat and become slaves. It was not the first time, so they did not have any psychological burden, being able to work under such a great wizard who could change the celestial phenomena, manipulate monsters, and even directly kill the demon leading the army. Such a big man was unimaginable in normal days. And looking at those soulless people, there was no need for such a terrifying big man to deceive them. As for the players did not care who they worked for. They could join the chivalrous expeditionary army, and naturally they would serve this unknown wizard king. For the players, they could get more information, and at first glance, it was a newly rising force, and it seemed that they could choose to become cooperative partners or even subjects. Because they had another world as a shield, the players' bodies were much softer than they imagined, so everyone looked at each other, and it seemed that no one saw a strong sense of resistance in each other's eyes. The knights' expressions were a little ugly, but looking at the human bodies on the ground, the knights could not speak, because their credibility had been bankrupt. Even if they went back, they could only go on an expedition of atonement. Chaos followers are guilty, and if they fail to distinguish them, they are also guilty. Just when everyone was a little shaken, the wizard clapped his hands and said again, "Of course, when I lead you to appreciate the real battlefield, I need to perform a ritual." A very simple and natural behavior. After all, if you do something wrong, you will be punished. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Everyone swallowed their saliva subconsciously, feeling that this matter might not be easy. But the mysterious wizard looked at the nervous people, smiled easily, and put forward his own conditions. It's not a big deal, just a very simple question. Do you admit that your choice is a failure? Do you admit that you were guided by a pleasure demon to attack the innocent me? Yes, we admit it. That's good. My request has been met. Looking at the chivalrous expeditionary army that put down their weapons in front of him, the Wizard King's face, which was impressive but the memory became blurred, showed a smile. Thank you for your understanding. Welcome to the land of descendants. Let us witness the real world. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Settlement, the beginning of civilization. 3 days later, outside the beach, seeing the boats full of chaos believers with only skins left, and the players happily sailing back to Britannia, Leon's expression was full of smiles. During these 3 days, Leon used his abilities, the surrounding fortresses and the dangerous chaos wasteland environment, as well as the Holy Grail and the Giant Tree Knight's personal experience, to finally prove to the knights and serfs that although it seemed wrong, Leon himself was a good person. A full 11,000 people joined the land of descendants, filling the originally empty area with countless blocks. Under Leon's manipulation, everyone lived in an orderly manner, and everyone's mind was filled with the professional advice and knowledge given by Leon, and no disturbance was caused in the initial integration process. But unfortunately, there were still 2,000 people who refused to join the land of descendants. They were all free people and manor knights who had their own careers and families in Britannia. But they also promised to bring those traces of demons to wash away the misunderstandings and grievances about Leon. As for the players, Leon also tried to include them in his own territory, but the pop-up prompt was very intriguing. You cannot manipulate the territory that is too far away from the city. Please set up an outpost or gathering place in the local area for cognition and expansion. You found some special traces. The existence of the players seems to be no different from that of the demons. You found some clues. If you continue to investigate, it is very likely that other technologies will appear. Very subtle prompt. The players seem to be able to become nutrients. To be honest, for a moment, Leon was thinking about throwing those players who had been contaminated by chaos directly into the Stonehenge for cleaning, but in view of the possible problems, he gave up this option, at least from the current point of view. The resistance of the power supporting the players crossing is still very strong. Although Edward drank the corrupt poisonous wine, he was fine. Although the symptoms of feminization appeared and his own behavior patterns began to become feminine, his own cognition and logical thinking abilities were not greatly disturbed. This also made Leon curious about the player group itself. However, this research must be ranked at the back of the list. This kind of cosmic wonder involving time, space and warp phenomena, needless to say, must be studied by planetary forces. However, after sending away those players and knights, Leon also put a mark on them. These psychic and magical marks will expand his vision and perception to distant areas, allowing these people to open up some of the progress for his vision. Of course, they have also been consulted before doing so. Leon never intends to hide his thoughts and attitudes, and he is the same now. And just as the host and the guest were happy, and all the sins were blamed on Joshua and the dark gods, facing the departing ship, Leon finally clicked on his own settlement part. His territory is no longer a gathering place or exile place, but a real faction starting point. The deeds of civilization have been settled. You have successfully resisted the invasion of chaos demons. You have successfully resisted the invasion of the chivalrous expedition. You have successfully resisted the invasion of the Norse pirates. You successfully resisted the invasion of the fairy world. You successfully resisted the invasion of the Sea Elves. You successfully resisted the invasion of the Adventures. During the process of establishing your civilization, the following major events occurred. These events will condense into a part of your civilization and become the national belief of your civilization. Star Emperor, the origin of your civilization is above the stars. Unimaginable wise men fell from the sky and spread the fruits of civilization among the ignorant people. People believe that this chosen king will lead them to a perfect world. They never doubt this, at least not now. Civilization characteristics. If there is no major event, all people's emotions are stable and fanatical. In the name of miracles, even before the population has gathered and the civilization has not yet been opened, your civilization has created many unimaginable wonders. But sometimes people wonder, is it enough for civilization to only need wonders? It seems that normal buildings are not needed at all. Civilization characteristics. The construction speed of wonders increases by 25%, the demand decreases by 25%, and the probability of special demand decreases. Bloody. On the way to the creation of civilization, you plundered and killed all enemies and possible allies. In the eyes of this civilization, everything in the world is an object to be conquered and waiting to be conquered. Civilization characteristics. War weariness is reduced by 50%. After confirming the civilization war, the combat effectiveness during the war is increased by 20%. Migrators. Most of the people of your civilization are plundered and migrated from the surrounding areas. Civilization characteristics. Morale will not decrease after the mixture of different cultures. Mythic path. You used the power of gods to change everything during the creation of civilization. They began to gradually accommodate and understand magic and higher level power. Civilization characteristics. Unlock the research of the mythic path and unlock the magic value system. Civilization smelting is being prepared. Congratulations, you have finally taken your first step in this complex world. After your civilization is officially created, all special entries and attributes will be smelted into one characteristic. Please note, the population of the land of descendants has reached 20,000 people, and there are no events in the current environment that can threaten the development of civilization. This civilization, which was born on the snowfield and stumbled along the way, has finally reached a critical point. Stories and legends have formed the foundation of civilization, and those demons and killings have become the cornerstones of civilization smelting. Although the new population is still a little unfamiliar, under the guidance of Leon's connection and the teachings of those former serfs who have understood all kinds of knowledge from the soul, they have quickly integrated into the area. The broken land occupied by the entire Stonehenge is undoubtedly the area controlled by Leon. Whether it is wonders, armies, or population, everything that has happened in more than a month has finally separated them from the original world and formed a new gathering place, a brand new civilization. A civilization that Leon created in a real sense, a civilization that he built with his own hands will be born in this area. From Leon's overlooking perspective, the entire area covered by the Stonehenge seems to be painted with a layer of golden yellow, waiting for his final decision. Please name your civilization and choose the main smelting direction. According to your civilization history, you can choose two main smelting directions. Looking at the prompt, Liang slowly exhaled and closed his eyes. Let's call it Star Bearer. We will eventually be the ones who carry the stars, and with the construction of wonders and the Emperor of the Starry Sky as the core, we will forge the characteristics of our civilization. The faction Star Bearer has been established. The characteristics of your civilization are Star Bearer. Please check the characteristics yourself. You have opened the civilization perspective. Please take the first step of your civilization. In the next moment, countless seas of stars unfolded in front of Liang, and factions like stars emerged in front of him. It was not until this time that Liang finally realized what this period of time meant. Until now, everything during this period of time only meant one result. I finally opened the novice tutorial. This is the real first step. Looking at the star-like panel and data in front of him, Liang's main body in the observatory took a breath with some ambition. Facing the picture in front of him, he felt the ambition burning in his body. "I will explode when it is put on the shelves. Please read it. Please collect. Please everything." Chapter 70. The Star Navigator and the World. Almost a month has passed since the ghost ship of the chivalrous expedition returned to Britannia and caused a stir. During this month, the whole of Britannia has been digesting these huge shocks one after another. The first was the result of the battle between the Britannian knights in the southern Badlands and the Green Tide. What disappointed all Britannians was that Britannia did not achieve the great victory they imagined. The Night King and his knight army were intercepted by the Orc Colossus when they charged in the southern Badlands. The entire Badlands is now a mess, and almost no one knows what the end of this disaster-stricken land will be. In addition to the orcs and dwarves joining the battlefield, the legendary ratmen and elves also began to join the battlefield. The elves tried to recover the former elven colonies, so they recruited 4 elven colony corps to go to the Badlands and planned to clear out the original cities. But those ruined cities were already full of uninvited guests. The brutal war between the elves and the ratmen started in an instant. At the same time, the struggle between the underground kingdom and the dwarf peaks never stopped. But while fighting with the dwarves and elves, the ratmen launched a two-front battlefield, and at the same time, they also received a very bad news. It is said that a player, relying on his own immortality, filled a sealing pit with flesh and blood and messy things, and released a sealed ancient undead mage. This unimaginably powerful evil is now gathering corpses in the underground kingdom, intending to carry out his unspeakable horrible plan against the living world. However, the orcs who are happy to hear about war have poured into the underground tombs of the dead on a large scale, intending to fight these undead creatures to their heart's content. Because the undead have no sense of pain and have teeth, they are very consistent with the orcs' love of fighting, and can also replenish the scale of their economic system on a large scale. The orcs generally use different teeth as currency. So in this case, the chaos pollution inside itself, which led to the chivalrous expeditionary army's large-scale northward march, and then being killed without a single piece of armor left, to be honest, is not a big deal. After all, looking around Britannia, everyone is fighting very happily. The empire on the right side of Britannia was fed up with the battle royale between players and fairies, and began to prepare to deploy witch hunters to purify the surrounding environment. On the other side, things on the Norska Peninsula were always so bad. In addition to the fight between players and fairies, there were also propaganda teams of the Navigators wandering around. These guys with golden eyes and runes on their bodies were not enemies of Britannia, but they were not friendly units either. They often dragged serfs over while chatting, and came back changed. After the heresy charges against the Navigators were lifted, the Britannians actually had a very subtle feeling towards the Navigators. On the one hand, these weird guys who came out of nowhere fulfilled one of Britannia's long-cherished wishes, which was to station in the Chaos Wasteland, hunt chaos demons and permanently shape their own great deeds there. In fact, many knights and reserve members chose to organize teams secretly because they wanted to follow this kind of chaos enemy and complete their great hunt, and planned to sneak to the Broken Land where the Navigators were located. Now it should be called the Land of Advent, to carry out their lifelong dreams. However, Britannia has a lot of objections to the negative stars taking away the Holy Grail and using it. If the negative stars can return the Holy Grail, then Britannia can reluctantly list the negative stars as a person who can communicate and contact. But now the negative stars have not said a word, and Britannia's garrison troops will naturally not take this force of only tens of thousands of people seriously. Although the Fairy of the Lake and other temples and forces have not said anything, Britannia, as a country of knights, is indeed very concerned about this face problem. There is also a small problem that the Sea Elves blocked the route to the Broken Land because of the chivalrous expedition. After these treacherous elf relatives controlled the route to the Strait of Orbian Island and the Land of Descent, they claimed that Britannia and the Land of Descent would pay the price they deserved. For both parties, everyone knew that this was a misunderstanding, but no one wanted to resolve this misunderstanding. For the people of the old world, fighting and killing each other is a normal phenomenon, and discovering the misunderstanding between each other and then starting to make peace is a rare thing. Therefore, Britannia didn't care too much about the small matter of disconnecting from the negative star, and in general, the old world didn't pay much attention to this aspect. Everyone had their own dozen old enemies to fight. For example, Britannia's expedition was defeated and was contaminated by chaos. There were at least a dozen times in the past few hundred years. Everyone's emotions were very stable, but there was only one person whose emotions were not very stable. As another victim, and the poor man who was blocked by the sea elves, Leon's emotions were not very stable. I want to expel all the sea elves from this world, leaving no one behind. Sitting in the observatory, Leon said with a gloomy look. The murderous intent in his words made the people around him look at him with their eyes and noses, and they didn't dare to say a word. The establishment of the negative star has been a month, thanks to the Norscan migration and the Chaos Wasteland conquest. Several towns have been built in the area expanded by the Stonehenge to support the operation of the entire negative star. These include the God-given plains, a grain-producing land, the Divine Thinker realm, a scientific research area created around the Infinite Labyrinth, which has been wrapped in the Life Boundary, the Giant Tree Outpost as the core point of the expedition, and the Fool's Beach, which is headed towards the coastline with the Heavenly Fortress as the fulcrum. Together with the final capital of the Land of Descendants, a thriving large territory has already taken shape. Moreover, after the negative stars joined Leon's psychic network, oh no, it was the sphere of influence, they naturally found that their abilities and qualities had been upgraded to a higher level. Negative stars, a group of people who carry the stars and look at the universe. Under the leadership of the only leader, they vowed to gain absolute liberation from this filthy world. No matter what sacrifices they have to make, no matter what price they have to pay. Civilization characteristics. Under the leadership of the only leader Leon, the output of all factions increased by 50%, the construction time of wonders was reduced by 75%, the war weariness system was blocked, and it was regarded as a psychic, magic, awakening state, and each individual could cast spells or spell-like abilities. But such a great group is now trapped on land. When I send out a ship, I have to send sea beasts to watch it and bring people to plunder. Every time I send out a fleet, I need a frigate with 50 people. Now 1/3 of our population are seafarers. Is this reasonable? Looking at the silent crowd around him, Liang shouted angrily in the observatory. Chapter 71 Wonders of the World, Out of Bounds Lighthouse. The old world is indeed an unfriendly place. Leon is so sure. After creating civilization, Leon has finally transformed from the original nomadic chieftains into a recognized civilization that may be recorded in the cultural archives of various countries. At least the documents of Britannia will record a negative star who is heading towards chaos in the Broken Land. But this does not mean that everyone knows, nor does it mean that after you become a civilization, everyone's attitude towards you will change 360 degrees in an instant. It is better to say that it is precisely because of the civilization communication panel that Leon has a deeper understanding of how bad the environment he is in is. Sometimes human ignorance is also a source of happiness. Perhaps it means this state. List of civilizations to communicate with. Britannia, indifferent. If you return the Holy Grail to Britannia, the other party will hold a round of meetings to discuss whether to communicate with them in a friendly manner. Chaos Warband. Hate. They will not accept any communication. Sea elves. Hostile. They will take any action to retaliate against your disrespect. Before confirming that you are a higher creature, they will not have any regrets or communication needs for their actions. Norskit tribe. Respect. You can choose to have your leader request a union with the leader of the other party. Special Advent creatures. Curious. You think these creatures may be your kind, and they do not intend to attack your territory. If the timing is right, you may be able to trade. Other regions and civilizations have not yet made contact, and you need to send an envoy to start diplomatic activities. Apostrophe on the map. Leon marked his position based on his own cognition and the information he found in the player library, and then he was not surprised to find that his area looked incredibly small. This was not surprising to Leon, because everything is difficult at the beginning. After all, he has built a civilization and has had a good start, which is considered a success. Map size and so on, which civilization's creation doesn't look very small at the beginning. As long as there is a bright future, it's fine. Then there is the indifference of other civilizations to themselves, which Leon is also very clear about. After all, he has been wandering around the Arctic Circle, and he knows the people inside the pole very well, but he doesn't know what the outside looks like. It is understandable that he has such a thin diplomatic panel, but the only thing he can't understand is what kind of mentality and what kind of thoughts those shit-like sea elves have, blocking his Norscan migration ship, blocking his door, and treating him as a primitive man in chicken feet, let alone executing the original plan. It is a bit difficult to find people now. At the beginning, the trade route to Britannia was blocked by the sea elves, and the player routes of the Frozen Sea and the Siren Sea were also harassed by the sea elves. If you want to pass safely, only Leon can pull out a ship specifically to clear and fight along the way to make the sea elves' plan fail. However, this unlimited behavior itself has a great impact on Leon's architectural development. The sea elves are nomads in the ocean. They just find a place to stay and then extort or eat people. They call themselves elves, but they have low morals and corrupt personalities, and the elves basically don't recognize them. But the place chosen as a pasture is unlucky, and there is no doubt that the negative star is this unlucky place. For the sea elves, the resistance of the prey will make them more excited. They claim to have inherited the hunting tradition from ancient times, which makes them have a strange arrogance and disdain for all creatures. So after the sea elves confirmed that the negative star was not a top force, they didn't even have the idea of communicating, and blocked the door and began to plan to eat his people. After nearly half a month of various operations without any effect, Liang thought it over. He finally realized how this barbaric game should be played. I don't care about the chaotic wasteland and the road development. I will kill you all first, and then develop. This is better. On the outskirts of the landing site, I plan to build a dock and build ships. You may have to bear with it then. And I plan to start a new round of wonder construction. The existence of those sea elves has too much impact on us. Leon in the observatory took a breath, calmed himself down, then looked at the people around him and whispered, "So far, every ship for foreign exchanges and trade must be accompanied by 50 members of the negative stars to fight against it. They shouldn't be consumed on this. The more ships there are, the more people we consume. Just to maintain the route of the Norse migration, we have consumed more than 2,000 people. Those sea elves have no intention of negotiating with us, nor do they regard us as objects of communication. They think we are a group of barbarians and a group of incompetent cowards. We can only respond to them in a way they can understand. We must build a fleet to hunt sea elves. We must use our own strong ships and powerful guns to maintain our dignity. I have sent the news about the wonders to your minds. If you have any opinions, you can talk about it." Although it is an absolute monarchy, Leon still gave these people full respect. Unimaginable knowledge was once again poured into everyone's brain. The basic construction knowledge and ideas instantly made them understand what an amazing product Leon wanted to create. World Wonder, Outer Lighthouse, Tartarus Introduction. This lighthouse is not a result of human research, but a beacon that was initially researched by the benevolent creatures inside the subspace when they wanted to communicate with the outside world. In that era, the world had not yet fallen into the era of disputes. People held good wishes and hopes, hoping that the world could be connected through this lighthouse and never separated again. But as the Great War progressed, this wish has become a curse. Requirements. The first stage is 200,000 magic power, 450,000 productivity, 20,000 stone, 20,000 iron ore, 30,000 silver ore, 30,000 gold ore, and 20,000 copper ore. After completion, it will continue to consume 500 points of magic power per day. For each level of wonder, all consumption is multiplied by 10. Effect. Add a characteristic psychic torch guidance to all ships in the faction. Under the effect of the psychic torch, within the guidance range of the outer lighthouse, the ship will never get lost, and the pointer will stably point to the location of the outer lighthouse. All creatures will instinctively reject attacking ships and refuse to fight against them. The speed of the ship is increased by 1/3 of the original design by default, and it is also regarded as a fortress unit. The scope of the first stage wonder, all waters with a radius of 5,000 kilometers. Feeling the powerful ability of the wonder, even Ulfric, who came back, took a breath and clearly understood Leon's determination to kill all the sea elves. App readers can see a rough map related to the work. Chapter 72. I'll be back soon. To be fair, the magic version of the Great Lighthouse, that is, Tartarus, is a very powerful wonder. It can even be said that with this wonder, no individual in the ocean with a radius of 5,000 kilometers will be able to resist the existence of the negative starship. That huge figure will be visible thousands of kilometers away, just like the world wound caused by Stonehenge. It will leave a striking mark in the real world. Once Tartarus is built, the entire Chaos Sea will be lit up by the bright psychic lights. The side effects of the lighthouse alone can make all of the sea elves know where to hide, and they can be easily tracked. But Leon didn't want to build it at all in the beginning, not to mention the huge amount of materials and magic expenditure. What is the concept of consuming 500 points of magic every day? The pure magic leaking out of Stonehenge is only 200 points every day, and the magic that each of them can support is only 0.1. This lighthouse consumes nearly 1/5 of the territory's magic resources. This is not as simple as just heating up magic resources, because many magic resources are fixed and need to be consumed. For example, expanding the border of Stonehenge, maintaining the defense of major cities and outposts, and fighting against chaos pollution. These fixed expenses are necessities of existence and are indispensable. In other words, after deducting these fixed expenses, Tartarus actually consumed almost all the disposable magic resources of the negative star. What is the concept? Ordinary humans do not produce magic resources at all. According to Leon's after observing the player's data, it was found that there are actually only 1 in 100 people who have the qualifications for magic awakening. Only about 100 people can provide 0.1 magic bonus, and it needs to be refined. Whether it is the Empire or Britannia, the Mage Corps is a very rare and precious combat unit. If converted in proportion, it takes about 5,000 mages to permanently station in the lighthouse to light the lighthouse. And according to the ratio of mages to normal people, that is 10 million people, only a country of 10 million people can support the wonders. And now because of the existence of those damn sea elves, Leon has to build it now. Is this acceptable? Those sea elves did such a cruel thing that they took away the lives of 10 million people. 10 million people. If 10 million people were given to me, wouldn't that be equivalent to 1 billion? If I had 1 billion, would I be like this now? The land of descendants would have been better a long time ago. The negative stars have conquered the world. Not at all. Weren't they all blocked? And how was 1 billion calculated? I don't understand what Lord Liang is talking about at all. Looking at Liang, who suddenly came up with violent remarks, the people present were watching their noses in their hearts, and fell into silence again, because they knew very well that Liang wanted to vent his dissatisfaction at this time. During this period of time, they really understood that Liang was not a god. Ordinary gods do not have such drastic emotional fluctuations. In addition to being fussy about calculating magic power and the surrounding forces and environment, at other times, as long as he was not controlling the crowd with his hands, Liang was actually a very tolerant ruler. There was no requirement for the ministers to sing praises for him, nor was there any requirement for the people around him to surrender their loyalty. Nor was there any requirement for everyone to have unreserved faith and love for Leon in their minds. Everything happened naturally. At least the negative star people never felt Leon's oppression on them. Just like the construction of this wonder now, in theory it seems that everyone will suffer a lot, but in fact the residents also know what their territory looks like. Sir, about this wonder, looking around, Oliver, the official in charge of the infrastructure of the territory, because a bard who is more suitable for managing culture has been captured, came out and said very respectfully, at present, based on our financial reserves and related material storage, we have no ability to build the Tartarus lighthouse you mentioned. We still have storage of magic and gold mines, but our reserves of copper and iron mines are relatively insufficient. And it will take some time to process them. Copper and iron mines, these two are the least likely to be lacking, right? Hanging his body upside down in the observatory, Leon looked at Oliver, who was glowing with gold, with some surprise. Wouldn't it be enough to go out and kill some of the God of War's demons? And by the way, drag his copper bowl back and kill it all. That thing is full of copper blocks, so why not just drag it back, strip it naked, and then kill it? Demons' weapons are often filled with magic, and it is difficult to remove magic alone without damaging the weapons and minerals. Even after absorbing magic with the world wound, the remaining iron sand and copper sand are of very low quality, far inferior to normal minerals. After all, it has been blown by the wind of chaos for so long, it is natural for the properties of the minerals to change. But this is indeed a bit difficult. Looking at the various necessary buildings and related facilities piled up in the territory icon, Liang frowned. The population is still too small. The total population of the Land of Descendants is currently about 22,000. Among them, about 4,000 people are hunting demons around the Giant Tree Outpost and Fool's Beach to earn magic and technology points. The various populations in other places are distributed in agriculture and other production activities that are in short supply. For high-density labor-intensive industries like mining, it is normal for large mines to absorb thousands or even tens of thousands of people. Of course, there are no mines of this level in the Land of Advent, so it is naturally unable to afford the construction process of Tartarus. The reason why the population is so small is that a considerable part of them are outside to maintain the route of the Norse Great Migration. Now the north side of the Norse Peninsula has been regarded as a forbidden delicacy by Leon. There are about 60 dragon boats sailing in an interlaced manner, carrying a considerable amount of materials and people in transportation every day. Many Norscans do not self-identify as negative stars, but as Norscans. Their ideas are similar to those of working outside. Such people are just floating populations, not the subjects of the Land of Advent, and the demands put forward by these cunning chiefs are also similar. It is nothing more than to let Leon show more power and security, so that the Norscans can get dignity and space for development. Although this kind of nonsense has made Ulfric angry and chopped off several heads, it is also an objective reality that the stubborn Norscans are unwilling to leave their hometown. Insufficient population, blocked routes, slow progress is not Liang's character. So after a brief thought, Liang decided to use an unconventional trick. You guys build the experimental aerospace battleship in the dock first, and I'll think of a way to trick the players into giving me the supplies. Those players don't have anything else, but they have plenty of supplies. Liang gave a thumbs up to his trustworthy subjects, and died at the speed of light lying on the spot. What the identities of the two worlds can bring is the integration of the resources of the two worlds. The next second, he opened his eyes in a tank full of nutrient solution. Alliance leader. Thank you. I will definitely update 10 chapters on the same day when the game is launched to give back to you. Thank you. Chapter 73 Players' Self-Examination and Trade Agreement. Compared to the tranquility of the old world, the player world seems very lively. More and more players are gradually coming into contact with the other world and are beginning to enter successfully. Especially when Edward was favored by one of the dark gods. But there was nothing abnormal. Mythology and psychic research have undoubtedly been put first. After all, it is a miracle that reverses the gender, vitality, and even self-cognition of human beings. This kind of thing has unimaginable value no matter from which angle you consider it. So for a while, the exploration of the other world has changed from being dispensable, a national-level project that does not know where the benefits are. Everyone just explores a little and uses the broad prospects PPT to cheat money, to now it can really turn out unimaginable technology and funds, and even a super hot business that can rejuvenate. Edward has been taken away from the current player base, as the first person to receive the favor of the gods, with the rejuvenation of the positive pole and the negative pole. To put it bluntly, it is a transgender, and the individual who really has a transgender of physiological organs. He is regarded as a key observation object. Liang doesn't know what Edward himself thinks, but for him, the current players are obviously a good partner. They are full of enthusiasm, and because of the successful cases, they are eager to invest in the other world on a large scale. In this way, as the only force that has shown a battle with the servants of the God of Darkness, and even made the opponent scream in horror, Leon's negative stars are very valuable in the eyes of players. Sometimes Leon also thought that if he showed the ability to wrestle with the dark gods in a real sense, and even tear the continental shelf and create a world-destroying disaster, would he be regarded as a god. But after thinking about it carefully, Leon still rejected this tempting option. The reason is simple: he is not sure why players on this planet can be projected into another world. Even if he has put down the magic sentry on Edward, he has no idea what theory is based on which the player's consciousness can be transformed into a physical body in another world. Instead of making so many risky moves, it is better to enjoy your double life like now. From another perspective, constantly obtain benefits and resources to manage your own negative stars area well. After all, players are not a monolithic group, and Leon's requirements are not high. Whoever is faster will come. As a player himself, Liang knew exactly what the players wanted. "You're back?" After opening his eyes in the nutrient chamber, the person in charge outside looked at Liang and sighed subtly. "You were really unlucky. We just arrived inside the Norska mountains, but we only found the negative star teams you mentioned, and didn't find any trace of you. But I believe we can rescue you soon." Oh, by the way, I still have a character waiting to be rescued." Looking at the man who seemed to be very sorry, Liang threw a psychic interference without hesitation. In the compiled psychic illusion, they got the transaction information about the negative stars, and even reached a preliminary agreement. The trade exchanges with the negative stars and the maintenance of the routes are already under negotiation. Because the players in the entire Norska area were concentrated, Liang didn't spend much effort to set up the triggering illusion in all the nutrient chambers. As for the so-called reality conflict problem, Liang never cared. He also knew that the players didn't really care about these things. When the benefits you offer are enough to feed everyone, everyone will be very tolerant of failures and some links. Because the price Leon offered in the illusion was 1,000 units of gold in exchange for a large amount of common resources such as iron ore and copper ore, this high profit and price advantage were enough to make everyone shut up. 1,000 units of gold were nothing to Leon. He could get these things as byproducts of casting spells just by stomping his feet. But for the players, 1,000 units of gold was a huge amount of gold coins that could greatly advance the construction of the entire City of Hope, and all they had to do was to concentrate the materials on the north side of the Norska Peninsula and then let the negative stars load them and transport them away. After slightly adjusting and correcting various values and the ideas between players to ensure that these tasks would continue, Leon walked out of the room and began to check the many materials left by players this month. These players are not incompetent, they just don't have access to many things, and since Leon showed them in the Broken Land what a great wizard can do, the players have opened their eyes and began to extract all the myths and related records left in various places into the database. What Leon needs is these seemingly insignificant mythological materials. Leon walked out of the room with a magical aura and casually covered the player base with a magic barrier. According to past memories, Leon once again sat in the basement of the player database. While flipping through various archives that were newly added in a month, he went to the forum to see if there was anything new. As expected, the front page headline was still the Shattered War that had dominated the list for a month. Shattered War. The shock brought by the Mad Witch King Leon. The power brought by the Four Paths. What can the other world really bring to us? The method of pursuing blessings. If you want to become a real strong man and want to be as powerful in the real world, you must pursue the blessing of the gods. The Wizard Growth Manual, step by step, teaches you how to become a wizard as powerful as the Mad Witch King. Please pay to watch and watch all the subspace powers we have collected for you. As crazy as always, modern civilized society still makes Leon relax his spirit a little. But while surfing the internet, Leon did not forget to mark some strange titles and locations. Soon, he noticed an inconspicuous title. "Excuse me, Has anyone noticed the problem of the Plague Hero column in the north of Hope City? Why has it become like this? Apostrophe. Plague Hero column? Isn't that a memorial column built to commemorate the Plague Hero? Leon looked at the forum post and raised his eyebrows, then opened the inconspicuous post. The attachment inside made him unable to move his eyes away. A light green mutant triangle logo was shining under a collapsed column. But what really concerned Leon was not these, but some details he saw under those columns. Noisy footsteps, and some light green fragments of magic stones called dimensional stones. These stones that fell from the evil moon and contained magical power were generally considered to represent evil power. But in Leon's eyes, this meant a very simple arithmetic formula. 1 cubic centimeter of dimensional stone is equal to 1 magic power. Hello, I am a player from the north of Norska. Are you interested in chatting about this? Apostrophe. Thanks, leader. Thanks again. Chapter 74. If there is profit, you can sell yourself out. Why am I here? Standing blankly under the Plague Hero memorial column, the player stared blankly at the ruins in front of him, feeling that his cognition seemed to be gradually awakening, as if some golden, hopeful images began to run in his mind, replacing some of his original thinking circuits and ideas. He remembered that he was a player and an official member. He found a way to communicate with the Skaven underground empire, and took the lead in becoming a communication channel between the negative stars and players. Ratman, and negative stars, a trade route that can be carried out in the Chaos Wasteland has emerged. The premise is that they can trust each other. The condition given by the negative stars is that it must be delivered to the Fool's Beach or the Sage's Beach in the Broken Land, or directly to the Giant Tree Outpost. The other party refused to hand over outside, but at the same time, the supplies and rewards they gave were very generous. Gold and gems are almost 1/10 of the market price. The Ratman's requirements are not high. They can provide some tunnels and routes in exchange for a batch of dimensional stones and magic crystals. Similarly, the negative stars need a large amount of supplies and can also eat dimensional stones. In other words, as long as the player can get through this route, basically, the goods are transported over and the gold is taken back, and there is no middleman to make a profit. Such good news should be told to others. Yes, tell others. The will was once again blurred in front of the golden light, the player thought vaguely, staggering towards the expected Hope City area according to his own thoughts, and his mind was filled with golden memories and thoughts. Walking in this icy and snowy land, the cold air did not have much meaning to calm people down, but instead was like a fuse, igniting many emotions in the mind. Even when the player was just walking on the road, he felt that his brain and emotions were boiling and burning, as if something was gestating in his soul. After walking for more than an hour, he returned to the tavern where the player often stayed from the Plague Hero memorial column. As soon as he opened the door, a figure that looked a little hunched came up. It was like a twisted shadow that appeared at the right position. You're here? Yes, I have everything here. Whatever you want, I have it here. Yes, as long as you don't care about the underground voices, we can cooperate. Cooperation. You are from the underground kingdom. Yes. Covering his stinging forehead, the player shook his head and looked at the hunched Ratman in front of him. He felt a blackout in front of his eyes. It was as if something strange had taken over his will, and it was as if he had drunk a strong drink and had blacked out. When the player regained his normal spirit again, he was already at a banquet that seemed to be full of food and drinks, surrounded by players with the same tired and confused eyes. The players wearing leather were also sitting next to the round table, half asleep and half awake, looking at everything in front of them. Then almost at the same time, everyone woke up suddenly as if they had broken an illusion. What's going on? What happened? Are we being attacked? It's a soul attack. All the players instinctively took out their weapons and looked at each other warily, and they all noticed that there seemed to be something wrong with each other. The hazy illusion seemed to rise again, but it was soon broken, causing waves of uneasy commotion in the room. Everyone's memory was distorted and bizarre, and they couldn't remember what they had done. Only the man sitting at the farthest position from the door at the round table covered his head and waved to everyone with a majestic look. The expression on his face seemed a little unbelievable, but he pretended to be calm. "I am the official person in charge. My name is Anderson. This is an attack from an unknown source. What we need to do now is to stay calm and not attack each other." Anderson is more or less an internet celebrity. Looking at that familiar face, many players can be regarded as a little bit of reassurance. Looking at the players who have already quieted down, Anderson stretched out his hand to signal everyone to sit down, and whispered, "Do you feel that there seems to be something wrong with your body? Feel it. It's like this." The players who met in the tavern looked at each other, and the expressions on their faces were a little subtle and unnatural. No matter how slow they were, they realized that something was wrong with this situation. What kind of power could bring them all together and make them think of the negative star and the caravan at the same time? Each of them could feel that it was like a dream some time ago. Everyone began to report to their organization and caravan in an orderly manner. Then they began to negotiate and operate like a madman, and almost all the contracts and routes were finalized in just a few days. This was an attack from the negative star, without a doubt. But when they really woke up, a belated reminder made their expressions become more and more strange. Reminder: you have gained a new talent because of a special journey. Talent, blessed from negative star. You are being noticed by a great being, and his blessing can make your physique change positively. Of course, this blessing is also a curse. You will hate the descendants of the dark gods, but every time you kill a demon, you will get a stronger reward. The more demons you kill, the more you will use their power to strengthen yourself. The more you kill, the more you get. To express his apology, the negative star has sealed the power of a demon in you. Use it well and don't let him down. Warning: this talent is likely to cause some abnormalities. Please pay attention. The power of a demon? Damn, killing monsters will increase experience. The attention of the gods and unique talents that everyone dreams of in the forum. They got them inexplicably. Seeing the status of the blessed displayed in the player's status bar, the players looked at the light golden lines on their arms and suddenly felt that working for NPCs was not so difficult to accept. At least they gave a lot, and the entry benefits were already beyond everyone's reach. Wouldn't it be better if you said it earlier? Why use such a rude method? For players, whoever gives milk is the mother. It is not unacceptable for us to kneel down and lick your toe. Looking at the flames that lit up at their fingertips with the thoughts of their hearts, many players looked at each other in the room, and their hearts became a little excited. Supernatural powers that can be brought back to the original world. What's there to say? Just be a dog. If he's a little rude, just treat it as being kicked. What's the big deal? What's more, they made more than 3 times the profit from this caravan. They are really gods descended to the world. Should we just organize a church? Doing these things in the other world, maybe there will be some extra gains. Looking at the player companions around them, whose runes were lit up as if in resonance, a player suddenly whispered a suggestion. Chapter 75 Preparation for Construction. It should be fine now. Looking at the players who were celebrating in the tavern and were very satisfied with each other, Leon breathed a sigh of relief. Of course, he couldn't have the ability to control players across time and space. To be precise, he did, but the consumption was so great that it was unimaginable. He had to perform a ritual to suck the wind of magic and blow up the continent to add to the fun. The player's advent mode was a mystery to Leon at the moment. It was not good to force the bricks to fly. All he could do was to descend into this world himself, and then hypnotize and brainwash in the real world at the same time, creating a time difference between the two sides, and pretending to be very useful to convince people. The players' inconsistency and greed were also within Leon's expectations. Players could not be bound. Even if their lives were limited, they would have a mysterious self-confidence and believe that there would be no problems. Cutting corners was a small problem, so this kind of action to establish authority was necessary. The players were frivolous and unreliable. Leon could certainly choose to establish his authority by killing people or forcing them to give orders, but that was not optimistic about the subsequent development. Only a slap in the face would make them believe that he could influence them, and at the same time give them something good to make them move. So, Leon specially created a unique rune system for their bodies. Kill the demons. As long as they kill the demons, The runes on their bodies will simulate the operation mode of Stonehenge, extract part of the demon's soul fragments and irrigate the body to strengthen the body. Of course, the effect cannot be compared with Leon's demon killing and technological explosion, and there is actually an upper limit. However, the number of demons to be killed to reach the upper limit is an astronomical number, a number that cannot be reached in the current length of human history. It is definitely enough for players. With these three approaches, plus some appropriate magic guidance and use of the surface tunnels of the Radman, Tartarus's material problems can be solved. Leon never intended to care about the gains and losses of a city or a place. Players, who are spread all over the world, are strong, durable, and greedy. Of course, they are not liked by all the Order races, but for Leon, it is precisely because these guys have taken the path of the lower class and have many ways that he can break the deadlock. Oh, if you think about it this way, you are still quite strong and quite humane. Just as Leon was sitting in the observatory and began to savor his exquisite magic operation, a series of red characters interrupted his self-entertainment. Warning: your fleet is being attacked by sea elves. The sea elves were counterattacked by your escort fleet. Your fleet lost 14 units of supplies and successfully injured 3 sea beasts. Return victorious. Damn sea elves. This is a shit victory. Looking at the cracked dragon boats that appeared on the ocean, and the various basic supplies that were thrown out because of the reduced counterweight, Leon looked at the sea elves wandering outside the bright sea area with hatred. These blue-skinned monsters drove the sea beasts to wander outside the range covered by the Stonehenge, carefully, and never touched the bright sea water. The tall sea elf in the lead, with a gaze that shone like the morning star, was looking at the wound of the world with hatred, as if he wanted to kill Leon from it. It was almost impossible for them to reach a peace agreement with each other. Both sides knew it very well, because 2 weeks ago, when Leon completely lost his patience, he had tricked the Sea Elves team to arrive around the Stonehenge sea area. As a powerful wizard, Leon not only deployed the Pale Army of the Dalbrand, but also drew a large amount of magic power to start hunting the sea monsters and hunter teams of the Sea Elves on the ocean. The golden flames covered the sea, almost igniting the entire ocean. After killing nearly 1,700 sea elves and more than 20 sea beasts, these bastards finally understood that the clear and transparent waters around the Stonehenge were forbidden areas that could not be touched. Since then, these sea elves have started their effective harassment tactics. However, this harassment tactic will not last long. In order to get more dimensional stones and treasures, the greedy Ratman handed over part of their underground kingdom's passages to players and negative star people for caravan trade. Once the trade route on the entire road is opened, these bastards in the water will be like grasshoppers after autumn, and they will not be able to jump for long. What's more, the aerospace battleship is being built in a closed dock. This kind of ship that is not in the water will naturally not be harmed by sea beasts and sea elves. Made of the wood of the Oak of Ages, and let Liang personally carve the battleship with the formation, he believes that it will definitely bring some surprises to those sea elves. System prompt: the sea elves are sending you a signal. System prompt: the sea elves are using light signals to express an elegant and extremely insulting statement. They claim that the ocean will always be their territory. As long as they exist, it is impossible for the fleet of the negative star to step out of the ocean, even against the chaos demons. System prompt: 30 lists of insults from the sea elves have been accumulated before, and they have now been collected and sorted for you. If you need it, you can check it yourself. System prompt: you may be able to communicate with the sea elves. It is a good premise to convey messages to each other. Communication let you see what real communication looks like. Looking at the sea elves who were fiddling with their runes and loudly insulting the wound of the world, Leon did not say much. He just silently rolled up the sea elves and sea beasts that he had killed before from the bottom of the sea. These pale and soulless monsters were dragged by Leon and rose from the clear and transparent sea. The corpse and ravaged body of the giant were stiffly posed in one action after another, expressing their body art to the sea elves outside. What he got in return was even more angry scolding from the sea elves. From the moment these sea elves intended to kill his old, weak, Women and children, it was doomed to fail. It's not that they don't have feelings, they just don't regard people as life. Fix the magic circle. We must build the aerospace battleship. These damn seals must pay for what they did. Looking coldly at the young elf in the ocean with bloodshot eyes, pointing at an elf corpse wearing a crown and shouting angrily, Liang responded by controlling the elegant-looking corpse to raise a middle finger. Available on Friday. I will try to get through the transition chapter quickly and show everyone something good. I will update it quickly. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.